Right now, as you listen to these words, an object older than our sun is emerging from behind our star, carrying secrets from an epoch when our solar system didn't exist. Its surface has witnessed the birth and death of stars. Its trajectory has been calculated across billions of years. And if the remote viewers are correct, if the 6 independent minds who perceived its interior without telescopes are right, then we're not looking at a comet at all. On August 15, 1977, the Big Ear radio telescope detected a signal so powerful, so precisely targeted at the universal hailing frequency that astronomer Jerry Amon scrawled one word across the printout: "Wow." That signal came from Sagittarius. It lasted exactly 72 seconds. It never repeated. For 48 years it remained one of SETI's most tantalizing mysteries, a cosmic question mark hanging in the constellation that points toward our galaxy's heart. Until now. 3I Atlas. The third confirmed interstellar visitor to our solar system traces its path backward through the cosmos to that exact same region of the sky. When astronomers calculated where this object was positioned, on August 12, 1977, 3 days before the WOW signal, they found something that defies comfortable explanation. The object was 600 astronomical units away. The light travel time from that distance, 3 days. The directional alignment within 4 to 8 degrees. The probability of this occurring by chance, 0.6%. But here's what keeps scientists awake at night, what creates that uncomfortable silence in conference rooms when the data is presented. When remote viewers, people trained in perception-based intelligence gathering during Cold War programs, were asked to describe this object without knowing what they were observing. 6 independent observers reported the same thing: not a comet, not a simple rock tumbling through the void. A vessel. Kilometers in scale, packed with technology that fuses biology and machinery in ways that don't fit our categories of life or artificial intelligence. Why would an object moving at 58 kilometers per second, releasing 40 kilograms of water vapor every second, in regions where ice should be frozen solid, align so perfectly with our planetary orbits? The combined probability calculates to 0.005%, 5 chances in a million. Why does its chemistry show pure nickel without iron isotope ratios found nowhere in our solar system signatures that suggest either exotic stellar origins or industrial manufacturing? Why does it maintain trajectory precision that should be impossible given its massive outgassing? Tonight we explore the intersection of hard science and human consciousness, where astronomical observation meets the controversial practice of remote viewing, where rigorous mathematics encounters statistical impossibilities, where a 7-billion-year journey converges with Earth at precisely this moment in human history. We'll examine what we know, what we suspect, and what we dare not say aloud, that we might be witnessing not just an interstellar visitor, but the return of something that has been watching us for longer than we've been watching the stars. The stakes couldn't be higher, because in the hours and days following this recording, 3I Atlas reaches perihelion, its closest approach to our sun. Every comet that has ever faced this trial has either fragmented or revealed its nature through spectacular outgassing. And what happens next will either confirm our comfortable assumptions about cosmic solitude or shatter them forever. The universe is about to show us something. The question is whether we're ready to see it. July 1st, 2025. The Atlas Survey Telescope in Chile captures something extraordinary, an object moving at 58 kilometers per second velocities that immediately mark it as unusual. Not the typical speeds of main belt asteroids or even long-period comets. This trajectory traces backward not to Jupiter, not to the Kuiper Belt, but to the space between stars. Within days, the International Astronomical Union confirms it, 3I Atlas, the third interstellar object we've ever detected. Where Oumuamua measured perhaps 400 meters and Borisov around 500 meters, early calculations suggest 3I Atlas spans 7,000 meters, 7 kilometers. Let me ground this in observable facts that multiple independent observatories have confirmed beyond reasonable doubt. The object's orbit is retrograde inclined 175 degrees relative to our solar system's plane. It's traveling essentially backward and upside down compared to all our planets. It approached from Sagittarius velocity relative to local space approximately 40 kilometers. The eccentricity exceeds 1.0, confirming mathematically that this object is not gravitationally bound to our Sun. Backward trajectory calculations suggest 3I Atlas has been traveling through interstellar space for potentially 7 billion years. When this object began its journey, our Sun didn't exist. This isn't just a visitor from another star system, it's a messenger from another epoch of galactic history. On August 19, 2025, the Swift Observatory turned its ultraviolet spectrograph toward 3I Atlas and found something that should have been impossible. Hydroxyl radicals, the chemical signature of water molecules breaking apart. The object was producing approximately 40 kilograms of water vapor per second while positioned 8 astronomical units from the Sun. At that distance, solar radiation is only about 1/9 as intense as at Earth's orbit. Surface temperatures should hover around 150 Kelvin, yet here was an object venting water at rates typical of active comets, much closer to the Sun. Dr. Dennis Bodowitz from Auburn University called it reading a note from another planetary system. But even he couldn't explain why this water activity was occurring at such an impossible distance. Spectroscopic observations from multiple observatories revealed chemistry that refused to match anything in our catalog of solar system objects. The nickel-to-iron ratio is wrong, dramatically wrong. In our solar system, nickel and iron occur together in proportions determined by nucleosynthesis. 3I Atlas shows strong nickel emission lines with iron essentially absent. The ratio is inverted by orders of magnitude. Dr. Zexi Singh, analyzing the spectroscopic data, noted that this signature resembles certain industrial nickel alloys more than primordial stellar material. The isotope ratios deepen the mystery water's deuterium to hydrogen ratio doesn't match Earth's oceans, Kuiper Belt comets, or meteoritic water. This is alien water formed around a different star carrying the chemical fingerprint of environments we've never sampled. Richard Kuna, working with Harvard's A.V. Loeb, published calculations showing that 3I Atlas must mass at least 33 billion tons to explain its observed trajectory. Despite venting 40 kilograms of water per second outgassing that should create thrust like a rocket engine, the object hasn't deviated from its predicted trajectory. Not by meters, not even by centimeters. For this to be possible, the object must be approximately 1,000 to 100,000 times more massive than previous interstellar visitors. Statistically, we should have found approximately 100,000 objects the size of Oumuamua before encountering something this massive. Yet here it is, the third interstellar object we've confirmed, and it's a giant. 3I Atlas has a coma confirming active outgassing, but instead of the expected tail streaming behind imaging, shows an anti-tail, a forward-facing feature that appears to precede the object. Some observations show material being pushed toward the Sun rather than away from it. By October 2025, multiple spacecraft had positioned to observe this historic encounter with Mars. 7 different spacecraft from 4 different national space programs, all with clear sight lines. What they captured forms another part of this mystery, but that's a story for later chapters. The established facts: 3I Atlas is real. It's massive. Its chemistry is exotic. Its behavior doesn't match our models. And it's currently behind our Sun, experiencing thermal stress that will reveal whether it's held together by gravity alone or by something more. 3I Atlas approaches our solar system on a retrograde orbit inclination 175 degrees. This extreme angle should work against planetary encounters. Yet the object's path threads through our solar system with precision that seems almost surgical. October 3rd, 2025, closest approach to Mars at 26 million kilometers. December 19th, closest approach to Earth at 1.8 AU. March 2026, closest approach to Jupiter. 3 major planetary encounters in sequence, each optimized for observation. Despite the 175-degree inclination, 3I Atlas's path aligns with Earth's ecliptic plane to within 5 degrees. Richard Kuna performed the statistical analysis. Probability of this alignment occurring by chance is approximately 0.2%. Now add the planetary encounter timing. The combined probability of arriving when Mars, Earth, and Jupiter are positioned for close sequential approaches drops to 0.005%, 5 chances in a million. You're more likely to flip a coin and get heads 17 times consecutively. Avi Loeb traced 3I Atlas's trajectory backward through space and time. On August 12, 1977, the object was positioned approximately 600 astronomical units from Earth. The light travel time from that distance, 3.3 days. 3 days later, on August 15, 1977, the Big Ear radio telescope detected the famous WOW signal. The signal's characteristics: 1420.45 Hz, the hydrogen line frequency intensity, 30 times background noise. Duration, exactly 72 seconds. Origin, Sagittarius constellation. 3I Atlas position on August 12, 1977, RA 19 40 meter deck 119 WOW signal origin, RA 19 25 meter deck 27 December. The angular separation accounting for uncertainties. Probability of this alignment occurring by chance is approximately 0.6%. If 3I Atlas transmitted that signal from 600 AU, the required power calculates to 0.52 gigawatts nuclear reactor scale. The WOW signal appeared at 1420 MHz, the hydrogen line, the cosmic hello channel. Any civilization capable of radio astronomy would know this frequency. The fact that 3I Atlas was positioned 3 days of light travel time away when that signal was detected creates a connection that's either meaningless coincidence or profoundly meaningful coordination. A spacecraft entering a solar system on a retrograde orbit gains tactical benefits. Encounters with planets happen at higher relative velocities, making interception difficult. The opposing motion allows easier deployment of probes that need to shed velocity to enter planetary orbits. The approach angle provides optimal observation geometry for studying multiple planets in sequence. This is exactly how you design a reconnaissance mission to survey an entire system efficiently. Let's be explicit: retrograde orbit, aligned with ecliptic, TP0202 planetary encounter timing, P or peak 0.05 Sagittarius Kabarash WOW signal alignment, P.6 combined probability, peak 6, 6 chances in a billion. Does this prove 3I Atlas is artificial? Absolutely not. Extraordinarily improbable events happen constantly in a large enough universe, but it means we can't dismiss the possibility without investigation. The mathematics demands we take seriously the hypothesis that this trajectory is navigated, not random. Remote viewing occupies an uncomfortable space in scientific discourse. Developed by the CIA and Stanford Research Institute during the Cold War, it's a structured protocol for gathering information about distant targets using what proponents call extended human perception. The methodology was rigorous: viewers given only alphanumeric target designations, no descriptive information. Sessions progress through defined stages, from basic sensory impressions to complex data, everything recorded and time-stamped for later comparison. The CIA's final 1995 assessment, remote viewing, produces information that appears to exceed chance expectation, but the signal-to-noise ratio is low. 23 years of funding by intelligence agencies that don't waste money on parlor tricks. Documented instances of actionable intelligence. Statistical analyses showing results exceeding chance. Something is happening. What that something is remains genuinely mysterious. In August 2025, Adventures in Remote Viewing assembled 6 experienced practitioners. Each viewer worked independently. No communication. No access to public information about 3I Atlas. Just the target number Describe the nature and purpose of this target. What came back should give any serious investigator pause, not because it proves anything definitively, but because of the convergence. All 6 viewers, working separately, describe the same basic architecture, something that fuses biological and artificial elements. John Dixon, not naturally made, shell-like structure with organic components visible through transparent sections. Patricia, hybrid construction, metallic framework, but the metals seem alive, growing, adapting. Internal spaces that feel more like organs than rooms. Birdie, the exterior looks weathered ancient, but there's movement inside, not mechanical movement, more like peristalsis, as if the whole structure breathes. Naka, multiple viewers reported sensing enormous scale kilometers, not meters. John Dixon's drawings show hexagonal surface patterns with seams that emit light green and white shifting colors. He described layered construction, different metals in different strata, some appearing to vaporize, releasing the material telescopes have detected. Patricia perceived internal viewing chambers, spaces designed for observation outward. Windows, she called them, though not transparent in the normal sense, more like sensors. Several viewers reported sensing presence, consciousness, intelligence, awareness. Patricia's description, crowded, multiple types of consciousness. Some feel ancient, patient, observing. Others feel mechanical, automated. And something else, something that noticed when I looked and looked back. That phrase, looked back, appeared in multiple independent sessions. The sensation of being observed during the observation. Bertie Jaworski's team perceived what they termed echo impressions, linking 3-eye atlas to Mars. Homing beacon, she said repeatedly. It's returning to check on something. There are installations underground, deep underground, in lava tubes, dormant for millions of years, waiting for the right signal. Sebastian Martin's testimony pushes credibility boundaries. He claims intelligence agencies tasked him with remote viewing 3IR Atlas at specific times, coordinated with observations at CERN. According to Martin, scientists use the Large Hadron Collider to create a dimensional gateway for communication with 3I Atlas. He describes holographic figures appearing tall, bipedal, communicating telepathically. Every scientist present received the same message simultaneously. We come in peace. We are here to gather the star seeds of this planet. Is any of this true? The claims are extraordinary, and evidence is testimony alone. But the testimony is specific, detailed, and internally consistent in ways that make simple dismissal uncomfortable. 6 independent observers, with no communication, describing hexagonal surface patterns, biological mechanical fusion, vast internal scale, multiple consciousness types, the sense of being observed back. Skeptics argue this reflects cultural contamination, shared expectations about alien spacecraft drawn from science fiction. This explanation has merit. But the details are oddly specific, oddly technical, and align disturbingly with some chemical anomalies telescopes have detected. Remote viewing testimony can never constitute scientific proof, but it can provide hypotheses worth testing. If viewers perceive hexagonal patterns, high-resolution imaging can check. If they perceive specific chemicals, spectroscopy can look. If they perceive probe deployment in December, we can watch. Remote viewing doesn't prove anything about 3I Atlas, but it raises questions that demand answers from more conventional observations. In science, anomalies are teachers. They're nature's way of pointing to gaps in our understanding, inviting us to look more carefully, think more deeply, question our assumptions. A single anomaly might be measurement error, instrument malfunction. Observer bias, the noise that accompanies all empirical investigation. But when anomalies cluster, when they reinforce each other, when they form a pattern that refuses to dissolve no matter how carefully you examine it, that's when you know you're standing at the boundary of something significant. 3I Atlas presents not one anomaly, but a cascade of them, each strange enough on its own to warrant investigation, but together forming a gestalt that challenges our fundamental assumptions about what we're observing. Let me catalog them systematically, building the case not for any specific conclusion, but for the unsettling realization that conventional explanations are straining.
Anomaly 1. The missing tail. Comets are defined by their tails, those magnificent streaming features visible to ancient astronomers who interpreted them as omens, as hair flowing from celestial heads, as messages from gods. The physics is straightforward: solar wind, the stream of charged particles flowing from the sun, and radiation pressure push gas and dust away from the nucleus faster than the comet's weak gravity can hold it. The tail always points away from the sun, regardless of the comet's direction of motion. 3I Atlas has a coma, the glowing envelope of gas that confirms active outgassing. Hubble observations clearly show this diffuse cloud extending outward from a brighter central concentration. But the tail morphology is wrong. Instead of the expected streaming feature trailing behind as the object moves, imaging reveals what astronomers call an anti-tail, a forward-facing structure that appears to precede the object rather than follow it. Additional observations show material being ejected toward the sun rather than away from it. Natural explanations exist and deserve consideration. Viewing geometry can create optical illusions. If we're observing the coma nearly edge-on, the tail might be hidden or appear foreshortened. Dust grains of specific sizes large enough that radiation pressure doesn't move them efficiently might linger in the coma rather than being swept into a tail. These explanations work for individual observations, but multiple telescopes from different angles all show similar peculiarities. The distribution of material doesn't match models of passive dust and gas streaming from a rotating nucleus. Anomaly 2. The chemical impossibility. The nickel-to-iron ratio breaks our understanding of stellar nucleosynthesis. Let me explain why this matters so much. Elements heavier than hydrogen and helium form in stellar cores and supernova explosions. The processes are well understood. Fusion in massive stars creates elements up to iron through progressive burning stages. Elements heavier than iron form during supernova explosions through rapid neutron capture. Nickel and iron form together. Always. The nuclear physics that creates nickel-56, which decays to iron-56, operates in the same environments and under the same conditions that produce stable iron isotopes. When we sample solar system materials, asteroids, meteorites, planetary cores, nickel and iron occur in predictable ratios determined by these formation processes. 3I Atlas violates this pattern. Spectroscopic analysis shows strong nickel emission lines without corresponding iron features. The ratio is inverted wrong by orders of magnitude. Dr. Zexi Singh, analyzing data from multiple observatories, noted in his published paper carefully, professionally, without speculation, that this signature resembles certain industrial nickel alloys more than primordial stellar condensates. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. The implication hangs in the scientific literature, unspoken but unavoidable. Industrial alloys are manufactured, selected, refined for specific properties: corrosion resistance, strength-to-weight ratios, thermal characteristics. Nature doesn't manufacture. Nature mixes according to nuclear physics and thermodynamics. Could exotic stellar environments produce this ratio naturally? Perhaps. A supernova with unusual neutron flux, a stellar environment with atypical metal enrichment history, nucleosynthesis pathways we haven't observed locally. These are possibilities worth investigating, but the explanation requires special pleading. It requires 3I Atlas to have formed under conditions so unusual we've never seen them in our galaxy, despite decades of spectroscopic surveys of stellar populations. The isotope ratios deepen the mystery.
Water's deuterium to hydrogen ratio doesn't match. Earth doesn't match. Kuiper belt comets doesn't match carbonaceous meteorites. The carbon-13 enrichment in CO2 emissions suggests either formation in a carbon-rich stellar environment or, and this is speculation processing, that separated isotopes, something biology does during metabolism and industry does during refinement. Anomaly 3. The water production. 40 kilograms per second. That's how much water vapor 3I Atlas releases while positioned 2.8 astronomical units from the Sun, nearly 3 times Earth's distance, in the frozen realm where water ice should be as inert as rock. The Neil Gehrels Swift Observatory detected hydroxyl radicals, the OH molecules that form when ultraviolet light breaks apart water molecules. This is standard cometry behavior. What's not standard is the distance. At 2.8 AU, solar radiation intensity is about 12% of what Earth receives. Surface temperatures should hover around 150 Kelvin, 123 degrees Celsius, 189 decahertz. At these temperatures, water ice sublimation is essentially zero. You need to reach approximately 180 K before water ice begins venting at detectable rates. So where is the energy coming from? Several hypotheses. Hypothesis 1, amorphous ice phase transition. Water ice comes in multiple structures. Crystalline ice. What we encounter on Earth has molecules arranged in regular lattice patterns. Amorphous ice formed in extreme cold has disordered molecular arrangement. When amorphous ice warms above about 130 K, it undergoes phase transition to crystalline structure. This transition releases energy about 10% of water's latent heat of vaporization. For large bodies composed predominantly of amorphous ice, this internal heat release can drive surface activity without external heating. This explains some deep space cometary activity, but 3I Atlas's position at 2.8 AU is too warm for the phase transition to still be occurring. Any amorphous ice should have transformed during the object's approach from interstellar space. Hypothesis 2, radioactive decay. Long-lived radioactive isotopes, uranium-238, thorium-232, potassium-40 generate heat through decay. Earth's interior remains molten partly because of this process. For radioactive heating to drive 3I Atlas's water production, the object would need extraordinary concentrations of radioisotopes far beyond anything measured in solar system bodies, possible if 3I Atlas formed in an environment with unusual nucleosynthetic enrichment. But this again requires special conditions we've never observed. Hypothesis 3, chemical reactions. Certain mineral hydration reactions release heat. If 3I Atlas contains reactive materials that are now coming into contact with trapped water, exothermic reactions could generate enough heat for sublimation. This mechanism works for localized activity on asteroids and comets, but sustaining 40 clues of water production requires energy release rates that would be difficult to maintain through chemistry alone. Hypothesis 4, internal heat source. If 3I Atlas contains an active power source, nuclear reactor radioisotope, thermal generator, or something more exotic, the sustained heat generation would easily explain the observed water production. This is speculation beyond current evidence, but it fits the energy budget perfectly. Anomaly 4. The trajectory, precision. Despite venting 40 kilojoules of water vapor along with dust and other gases, 3I or Atlas maintains trajectory precision that shouldn't be possible. When gas vents from a comet, conservation of momentum creates thrust. The nucleus recoils, experiencing non-gravitational acceleration that alters its orbit. This effect is measurable in every active comet. Astronomers model it using parameters that describe the magnitude and direction of outgassing thrust. 3I Atlas shows no measurable non-gravitational acceleration. The trajectory matches pure Keplerian motion gravity alone to within observational precision. For outgassing thrust to be negligible requires enormous mass. Kuhne's calculation at least 33 billion tons. This would make 3I Atlas 3.5 orders of magnitude more massive than previous interstellar visitors. Alternatively, active station keeping. If 3I Atlas has propulsion systems that compensate for outgassing thrust. Maintaining precise trajectory despite mass loss, the observations make sense. Both explanations are uncomfortable. One requires 3I Atlas to be impossibly massive, the other requires it to be artificial. Anomaly 5, the planetary dance. The retrograde orbit at 175° inclination should make planetary encounters rare. Objects approaching from high inclination have lower probability of close approach to ecliptic plane targets. Yet 3I Atlas passes close to Mars. 0.175 AU approaches Earth, 1.8 AU predicted, and heads toward Jupiter, closest approach March 2026. 3 major encounters in sequence. The combined probability of this configuration. Retrograde orbit ecliptic alignment, planetary encounter timing is approximately 5 in a million. Is this luck or navigation anomaly? 6. The periodic variations. Brightness measurements show possible 4-hour periodicity. Position measurements reveal 2-hour variations. These could indicate rotation of an irregularly shaped nucleus with different faces reflecting different amounts of light. Active venting from specific locations, creating asymmetric thrust that manifests as position wobble. Internal processes cycling on regular intervals, power systems active cooling. Whatever operates inside natural comets show brightness variations from rotation. But the patterns in 3I Atlas's data are more regular, more periodic, more suggestive of systematic activity than chaotic outgassing. Anomaly 7. The impossible age. 7 billion years. The modeling by Matthew Hopkins's team suggests 3I Atlas has been traveling through interstellar space since before our solar system formed. For any object to survive that long intact, to retain structural coherence through potential supernova shock fronts, through stellar radiation fields, through collisions with interstellar dust, at relativistic velocities suggests either extraordinary durability or active maintenance. Natural objects fragment, cosmic rays sputter surfaces, collisions erode. Over billions of years, most objects become dust. 3I Atlas remains solid active, releasing materials that suggest fresh, volatile ices rather than depleted processed surfaces. Each anomaly considered alone has potential natural explanations. Exotic but possible, unusual but not unprecedented. Within the boundaries of known physics, even if stretching those boundaries. But taken together, they form a pattern that resists comfortable interpretation. The missing tail suggests directed thrust rather than passive outgassing. The chemical impossibility suggests manufacturing rather than natural formation. The water production suggests internal heat rather than solar warming. The trajectory precision suggests active control rather than ballistic flight. The planetary encounters suggest targeting rather than random passage. The periodic variations suggest systematic activity rather than chaotic processes. The age suggests engineering rather than geological processes. This is where scientific conservatism becomes both strength and limitation. We're trained to not invoke unprecedented explanations when conventional ones might suffice. We're taught that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But at what point does adhering to conventional explanations require more extraordinary special pleading than simply accepting that we might be observing something artificial? I don't know the answer. Neither does anyone else. That's what makes December so important. When 3I Atlas emerges from behind the sun, when we can observe it again with all our instruments trained on it, we'll have more data, more evidence, more constraints. Until then, we sit with the anomalies, with the pattern that won't resolve, with the uncomfortable possibility that the universe is showing us something new. Let's be intellectually honest. The most likely explanation for 3I Atlas, despite all the anomalies we've cataloged, remains that it's fundamentally natural, a comet, an unusual one certainly, but ultimately an object following physical processes we simply don't yet fully understand. The universe is vast, ancient, and filled with phenomena operating across spatial and temporal scales that dwarf human experience. What seems impossible to us might simply be rare. And rare over billions of years and trillions of cubic light years happens constantly. We just haven't been watching long enough to have seen everything that nature can do. This hypothesis deserves the highest weight in our analysis, approximately 60% of our consideration, not because it's necessarily correct, but because it requires the fewest extraordinary assumptions. It works within established physics, known chemistry, and observed astronomical processes. It doesn't demand new categories of explanation. Cooney's calculation of 33 billion tons relies on assumptions about albedo, how much sunlight the object reflects versus absorbs. These assumptions might not hold for an interstellar visitor with exotic surface properties. Consider if 3I Atlas has an unusually dark surface, absorbing rather than reflecting most incident light, the same apparent brightness could indicate a much larger, denser object than we'd estimate, assuming typical cometary albedos of 4–8%. Organic rich surfaces similar to some asteroids can have albedos as low as 2%. Moreover, if the object is highly porous, imagine a cosmic rubble pile loosely bound, aggregate with 80% void space. It could be enormous in volume without being particularly massive. Such structures exist in our solar system. Comet 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko, visited by the Rosetta spacecraft, has density around 0.5 g Mars Schem 3/2 that of water ice. A porous structure would explain the lack of non-gravitational acceleration differently. The outgassing might be more symmetric than we imagine, venting from multiple locations around the nucleus, such that thrust vectors cancel out. The net force approaches zero, not because the object is immovable, but because pushes in all directions balance. Recent research has revealed surprising complexity in cometary ice physics. What we've traditionally modeled as simple water-ice sublimation turns out to involve multiple competing processes, amorphous ice reservoirs. While the surface might have crystallized during approach, the interior could still contain vast reserves of amorphous ice. When this interior ice reaches critical temperature, perhaps through heat conduction from warming outer layers, phase transition releases energy. The exothermic reaction heats surrounding material, driving surface activity without direct solar warming. Think of it as a slow-motion explosion that's been waiting millions of years to occur. The trigger isn't reaching the sun, it's reaching a critical temperature threshold that allows internal transformation. Trapped volatiles, CO2 and other gases, could be trapped in amorphous ice matrix. As that matrix crystallizes, the volatiles release explosively. The energy from gas expansion heats surrounding water, ice creating a feedback loop that sustains activity far from the sun. Comet 29P Schwarzmann-Wachmann 1 shows massive outbursts while beyond Jupiter's orbit, activity driven by internal processes rather than solar heating. 3I Atlas might be similar, but on larger scale. Greenhouse effect. Even thin layers of dark, organic-rich dust on the surface can create microenvironments where solar heating is concentrated. Subsurface ice vents through cracks, creating localized hotspots that drive water production far more efficiently than surface temperature alone would suggest.
These mechanisms, while speculative in their specific application to 3I Atlas, are all observed in solar system comets. We're not invoking unknown physics. We're applying known physics to novel circumstances. The strange nickel-to-iron ratio points to exotic formation conditions, but exotic doesn't mean artificial. 3I Atlas originated in a completely different stellar environment 7 billion years ago. Consider the evolution of metallicity in the galaxy. Early stellar populations formed from nearly pure hydrogen and helium. As generations of stars lived and died, supernova explosions enriched the interstellar medium with heavier elements. But this enrichment wasn't uniform. Different regions of the galaxy experienced different supernova rates, different stellar types, different nucleosynthetic pathways. A star system forming in the thick disk of the Milky Way 87 billion years ago might have had metallicity distribution unlike anything in our local neighborhood.
The supernova that enriched that particular molecular cloud might have been unusual, perhaps, a specific type of electron capture supernova that produces different nickel-to-iron ratios than standard type upper 2 events. The isotope ratios that don't match solar system norms are exactly what we'd expect from matter formed around a different star. The fact that we've never seen these exact signatures before doesn't make them impossible. It makes 3XOI Atlas the first sample we've analyzed from that particular stellar chemistry. This is the wonder of interstellar objects, their scientific gift packages from environments we can never visit, carrying chemical fingerprints of stellar evolution across billions of years. The suspiciously perfect trajectory might reflect observer selection. We only detect the objects whose paths bring them close enough to become bright. Imagine thousands of interstellar objects passing through the outer solar system annually. Most remain too distant, too faint, never entering our detection threshold. The ones we see represent the tiny fraction whose trajectories happen to intersect our observation volume. The planetary encounter timing feels significant because we're here to assign significance. Mars, Earth, and Jupiter are large targets, occupying substantial fractions of the inner solar system's volume. Any object passing through has reasonable probability of coming relatively close to at least one major planet. We notice the alignment because we're pattern-matching creatures. We find meaning in coincidence. But the universe doesn't care about our patterns. It simply follows physical law. And sometimes that law produces configurations that look designed when they're actually just rare outcomes of random processes. 7 billion years sounds impossibly long for an object to survive intact. But interstellar space is mostly empty, profoundly, unutterably empty. The average density of the interstellar medium is about 1 atom per cubic centimeter. Even in denser molecular clouds, you're looking at 1,000 atoms per cubic centimeter. For comparison, Earth's atmosphere at sea level contains about 10^19 atoms per cubic centimeter. Collision risks in this environment are vanishingly small. The object might travel millions of years between impacts significant enough to even chip its surface. Cosmic ray damage accumulates, yes, but slowly, at rates measured in nanometers per million years for dense materials. If 3I Atlas spent most of its journey in the deep freeze of interstellar space, where temperatures approach 3 Kelvin and physical processes nearly cease, degradation would be minimal. It's the ultimate preservative environment, cold, dark, and empty. The apparent structural integrity doesn't require exotic engineering. It might simply reflect that 3I Atlas is fundamentally stable, perhaps a coherent body that formed through gentle accretion in a circumstellar disk composed of materials that don't readily sublime in vacuum, protected by its sheer size from the worst environmental hazards. Humans are pattern-matching machines. It's hardwired into our cognition, an evolutionary adaptation that kept our ancestors alive. Better to see predator and shadow that turns out to be branch than miss the actual tiger. But this trait makes us see design where none exists, agency, in randomness, meaning in coincidence. We connect dots that aren't actually connected because the alternative, accepting that some events are merely random, is psychologically uncomfortable. The clustering of anomalies around 3I Atlas might be our pattern recognition systems working over time. We're finding connections between unrelated facts, drawing lines that satisfy our narrative-building impulses but don't reflect underlying reality. Consider we've observed exactly 3 confirmed interstellar objects, Oumuamua was weird, everyone agrees on that, but weirdness doesn't imply artificiality. 2I Borisov was boringly normal, behaving exactly like a standard comet. And now 3I Atlas is weird again, but differently weird. 3 data points. That's not enough to establish meaningful patterns. We're seeing anomalies because we're looking for them and because the universe genuinely contains phenomena we don't yet understand. Astronomical history is littered with phenomena that seemed impossible when first observed, only to be explained through natural processes once we developed better models, pulsars. When Jocelyn Bell detected the first pulsar in 1967, the signal was so regular, pulsing with millisecond precision, that they nicknamed it LGM-1 Little Green Men. Surely only artificial transmitters could produce such regularity. Turned out to be rotating neutron stars, natural objects with physics so extreme we hadn't imagined them. Fast radio bursts. When the first FRBs were detected in 2007, their immense energy and brief durations seemed to violate astrophysical limits. We now understand them as magnetar flares, natural if extraordinary stellar events. Tabby's star KIC 8462852's bizarre dimming pattern in 2015 spawned alien megastructure speculation. The most likely natural explanation involves cometary debris or circumstellar dust, though debate continues. Black holes. Once considered mathematical curiosities that couldn't exist in reality, now confirmed as natural consequences of stellar evolution. The pattern is clear. Nature routinely produces phenomena that initially seem impossible. Our failure to immediately explain something doesn't mean it's inexplicable, it means our models are incomplete. 3I Atlas fits this historical pattern. It's genuinely anomalous, worthy of intense study, but ultimately likely to be explained through natural astrophysics once we gather sufficient data and develop deeper understanding. Occam's razor, the principle that simpler explanations are preferable, should guide our thinking. The natural comet hypothesis requires no new assumptions about alien civilizations existing and building interstellar spacecraft. Those civilizations choosing to visit our solar system specifically, their technology surviving billions of years of interstellar travel, their motivations aligning with the behaviors we're observing. The artificial hypothesis requires all of these assumptions, plus acceptance that we're observing the most significant event in human history, first confirmed contact with alien technology. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Statistical improbabilities and suggestive anomalies don't meet that threshold. We need direct detection of artificial structures, electromagnetic transmissions that can't be natural, or behaviors that unambiguously demonstrate intelligent control. Without such evidence, the default position must be natural origin. Not because we're being close-minded, but because that's how science works. We don't invoke unprecedented explanations when conventional ones might suffice, even if we haven't worked out all the details yet. The burden of proof rests with those making extraordinary claims. If someone asserts 3I Atlas is artificial, they must provide compelling evidence that natural explanations cannot account for. Anomalies and improbabilities aren't sufficient. Every natural object has unique characteristics that would seem improbable if you calculated odds after the fact. This isn't about being dismissive or closed-minded. It's about maintaining rigorous standards that prevent us from jumping to conclusions based on incomplete data and cognitive biases. The natural hypothesis deserves primary consideration because it's testable, falsifiable, and consistent with everything we know about comets, interstellar space, and stellar evolution. If it's wrong, additional observations will demonstrate that. If it's right, those same observations will reveal the natural processes we're currently misunderstanding. Most astronomers studying 3I Atlas lean toward natural explanations. This isn't because they're unimaginative or dogmatic. It's because they understand how often anomalies resolve into natural phenomena once better data arrives. Tom Statler, NASA's lead scientist for small solar system bodies, stated in October 2025, 3I Atlas looks like a comet does comet things and very strongly resembles comets we know. Yes, there are unusual aspects that's expected for an interstellar visitor from a completely different formation environment. But nothing we've observed requires invoking artificial origin. Albrook, that assessment might change with new data. Science is provisional, always open to revision based on evidence. But right now, based on what we know, the natural explanation remains most probable. This doesn't mean we stop investigating. It doesn't mean we dismiss anomalies. It means we proceed carefully gathering data, testing hypotheses, allowing evidence rather than speculation to guide conclusions. December will bring new observations. We'll analyze them rigorously. And if the natural hypothesis proves inadequate, if the evidence genuinely points toward artificial origin, science will adapt. Until then, intellectual honesty requires we hold the position that 3I Atlas is most likely natural, however strange its specific characteristics might be. Between the comfortable natural explanation and the extraordinary artificial hypothesis lies a middle ground phenomena that are technically natural, but so rare, so unusual that we've never observed them before. These edge cases deserve approximately 25% of our analytical weight because they represent genuine possibilities that push the boundaries of known astrophysics without breaking them entirely.
Dark matter comprises approximately 85% of the universe's mass, yet we've never directly detected it. We infer its existence through gravitational effects. Galaxies rotate too fast to be held together by visible matter. Alone, gravitational lensing reveals mass that doesn't emit light. The cosmic microwave background shows acoustic peaks that require dark matter density. But what dark matter actually is remains mysterious. Leading candidates include WIMPs, weakly interacting massive particles, axions, sterile neutrinos, and more exotic proposals like primordial black holes or even unknown fields that couple weakly to normal matter. Here's a speculative but not impossible scenario. What if 3I Atlas isn't primarily normal matter, but a dark matter structure that has accumulated a shell of normal matter over billions of years of interstellar travel? This would explain several anomalies. The mass problem. Dark matter doesn't interact with light, doesn't reflect it, doesn't emit it. An object primarily composed of dark matter could be far more massive than its brightness suggests. The 33 billion ton estimate might be underestimate, not overestimate. The trajectory precision. If most of the mass is dark matter, concentrated in a compact core and only the outer shell is volatile ice undergoing sublimation, then outgassing thrust would be negligible compared to total mass. The trajectory would remain pristine despite active venting, the unusual chemistry. The normal matter shell accumulated over billions of years from interstellar medium with composition. Unlike our solar system could easily show exotic isotope ratios and element distributions, the water production. If the dark matter core has gravitational self-heating, similar to how Jupiter's interior remains hot from gravitational contraction, that internal heat could conduct outward driving surface activity independent of solar radiation.
This hypothesis requires dark matter to be self-interacting, able to clump into compact structures rather than remaining diffuse. Some dark matter models predict exactly this behavior. The SIDM self-interacting dark matter framework allows dark matter particles to scatter off each other, enabling gravitational collapse into dense cores. Is this likely? No, we have no confirmed observations of dark matter structures at this scale, but is it possible within current physics? Yes. Planetary formation is chaotic. In young star systems, newly formed planets migrate gravitational interactions, scatter smaller bodies, and occasionally entire planets get ejected into interstellar space. What if 3I Atlas is the exposed core of a former ice giant planet, a body that once resembled Neptune or Uranus but had its outer layers stripped away during violent ejection? Such cores are predicted to be rich in water, ice, ammonia, and methane ices in the outer layers, transitioning to high-pressure ice polymorphs in the intermediate zones, and ultimately to a rock-metal core enriched in nickel-iron alloys. But here's the key: if the object was ejected during a close stellar encounter that heated one hemisphere preferentially, the surface composition could be highly asymmetric. One side might be metal-rich, explaining the nickel signatures, while the other remains ice-rich, explaining the water production. The trajectory precision could result from the object being tidally locked, always presenting the same face forward, such that outgassing is directional but consistent, creating thrust that averages to near zero over rotation periods. The age fits 7 billion years ago. Planetary formation was active throughout the galaxy. Stellar interactions were more common in the denser environments of the young Milky Way. A planetary core ejected then could have been wandering interstellar space ever since finally arriving here now. The unusual chemistry reflects formation around a different star in a protoplanetary disk with metallicity and isotope distributions unlike our solar system. This hypothesis has advantages. It explains the large size, unusual composition, and sustained activity using only processes we know occur: planet formation, ejection, long-term evolution. The coincidental trajectory becomes less coincidental if we acknowledge that we're sampling from a population of billions of such objects wandering the galaxy, and we only notice the ones that pass close. Here's an intriguing geometric possibility. What if 3I Atlas's trajectory isn't random but was focused by the gravitational field of the galactic core, the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy? Sagittarius, a 4 million solar masses, creates a gravitational well that can lens and focus trajectories of objects passing nearby. If 3I Atlas passed through the galactic core region millions of years ago, its trajectory could have been bent precisely onto a path that intersects our solar system. This is called gravitational focusing, or gravitational lensing for trajectories rather than light. It's a confirmed phenomenon. ALMA and other observatories have detected gravitational focusing effects in star-forming regions and galaxy clusters. The probability calculation changes dramatically if 3I Atlas's trajectory wasn't random, but was focused by SGRH. What seemed like 1 in a million alignment becomes significantly more likely if the black hole acts as a cosmic lens, directing objects from certain regions of the galaxy toward others. The targeting we observe wouldn't reflect intelligence, it would reflect geometry. Natural gravitational focusing, creating the appearance of intentionality. As objects travel through interstellar space, they interact with the sparse but not entirely empty medium. The interstellar medium contains gas, predominantly hydrogen dust, magnetic fields, cosmic rays, and radiation fields. Over billions of years, these interactions can profoundly modify an object. Erosion and accretion. Impacts with interstellar dust grains erode surface materials while also depositing new materials. The net result could be a surface composition representing billions of years of interstellar environment rather than the object's original formation chemistry. Chemical processing. Cosmic rays break molecular bonds, creating reactive species. UV radiation from starlight drives photochemistry. Over time, the surface becomes a complex mixture of processed materials, unlike anything formed in planetary environments. Magnetic field interaction. If the object has magnetic properties, interaction with galactic magnetic fields could affect its rotation, orientation, and even trajectory over millions of years. The specific alignment we observe might reflect magnetically mediated evolution rather than navigation. Radiation pressure effects. While traditionally thought too weak to significantly alter large body trajectories integrated over billions of years, in the low-density interstellar environment, radiation pressure from starlight and cosmic rays could create subtle but measurable effects. 3I Atlas's anomalous properties might reflect not where it formed, but where it's been a palimpsest of interstellar processing, obscuring original characteristics. The primordial solar system remnant. Here's a controversial but technically possible idea. What if 3I Atlas isn't interstellar at all, but rather an extremely ancient member of our own solar system? The standard model assumes the solar system formed 4.6 billion years ago from a collapsing molecular cloud. But what if our sun captured material from an earlier generation star system during formation? What if 3I Atlas is a remnant from a 7 billion-year-old system that our sun passed through gravitationally capturing objects before they could escape? This object could have spent billions of years in an extremely distant orbit, perhaps in the theorized inner Oort cloud, finally perturbed onto a trajectory bringing it back through the inner solar system. The retrograde orbit makes sense if the capture was from a passing stellar system moving in opposite direction to our local stellar neighborhood. The exotic chemistry reflects formation in an older metal-poor environment. The interstellar velocity might simply be the unbound nature of this incredibly distant orbit. This hypothesis is a stretch. It requires specific conditions during solar system formation that we have no direct evidence for.
But it's not physically impossible, and it would explain why this particular interstellar visitor seems to have such uncanny alignment with our planetary system. It's not visiting, it's returning. Recent research has revealed that water ice can exist in multiple exotic phases under different pressure and temperature conditions, at least 18 confirmed crystalline structures, possibly more. Some of these high-pressure ice phases have properties that seem almost impossible. Ice 7 remains solid at temperatures above 100 degrees Celsius under sufficient pressure. Ice X is metallic, conducting electricity. Some phases are denser than liquid water, others less dense. If 3I Atlas contains these exotic ice phases, perhaps formed during a high-velocity impact billions of years ago that briefly created extreme pressures, the thermal behavior during solar approach might be completely unlike standard water ice sublimation.
Phase transitions between exotic ice structures could release energy in unexpected patterns, drive activity at distances where normal ice is dormant, and create the chemical signatures we're observing as these ancient structures finally destabilize. These edge case hypotheses share common ground. They explain 3I Atlas's anomalies, using natural processes that are unusual but not unprecedented, rare but not impossible. They require us to stretch our models to consider scenarios we haven't previously observed, to accept that the universe contains edge cases we're only now beginning to sample. But they don't require we abandon physics. They don't demand new fundamental forces or unknown laws. They work within the framework of current understanding, even as they explore its boundaries. This is how science advances, not through revolutionary breaks with past knowledge, but through incremental expansion of what we know is possible. Whether any of these specific scenarios explains 3I Atlas, I don't know, but they demonstrate that the space between obviously natural and definitely artificial contains rich territory worth exploring before jumping to extraordinary conclusions. This is speculation. I want that clearly stated at the outset. What follows is not established fact, but hypothesis, an attempt to take seriously the possibility that 3I Atlas might be artificial while remaining intellectually honest about the lack of definitive proof. Approximately 15% of our analytical weight should rest here, not because the evidence strongly supports this conclusion, but because the accumulated anomalies make it irresponsible to dismiss entirely. Let me be clear about what artificial would actually mean in this context. When we say artificial, we're not necessarily implying little green beings piloting spacecraft. We're considering the possibility that 3i Atlas demonstrates intentional design, that its characteristics result from purposeful construction rather than natural formation processes. This could take multiple forms. Autonomous probe, a self-contained spacecraft launched millions or billions of years ago by a civilization that might no longer exist, executing programmed mission parameters without conscious oversight. Von Neumann probe, named after mathematician John von Neumann, who theorized self-replicating machines, a probe capable of harvesting materials from asteroids or comets to build copies of itself, allowing exponential exploration of the galaxy with minimal initial investment. Generation ship or seed ship, a vessel designed for multi-million-year journeys, possibly carrying biological material, digital consciousness, or simply data about its civilization of origin. Ancient artifact technology so old that its original purpose has been obscured by time, continuing to function on automation, but no longer serving any active intelligence's goals. None of these scenarios requires ongoing conscious control. They're all consistent with what we might observe, an object following a trajectory, maintaining structural integrity, possibly deploying smaller craft or transmitting signals, but showing no evidence of real-time decision-making or response to current conditions. Let's examine seriously what an interstellar probe designed by an advanced civilization might look like, and whether 3i Atlas fits that description. Mission profile. If you're a civilization wanting to study other stellar systems, you face fundamental constraints. Even traveling at 1% light speed requiring propulsion technology we don't possess, it takes centuries to reach nearby stars. Faster travel requires exponentially more energy. The solution: send probes on extremely long-duration missions. Design them to survive millions of years in interstellar space. Program them to conduct observations when they pass through target systems, gathering data for transmission back to home or storage until retrieval. Such probes would need durability materials and structures capable of surviving eons without maintenance, resistant to cosmic ray damage, micrometeorite impacts, and radiation exposure. Power source: nuclear fission or fusion would work. Radioisotope thermoelectric generators using decay of long-lived isotopes like plutonium-238 could provide power for millions of years at modest levels. Propulsion: minimal, used only for trajectory corrections. Most navigation happens through gravity assists, using stars and planets for free velocity changes. Camouflage: making the probe resemble natural objects reduces the chance of detection by primitive civilizations that might react hostilely. Coating the hull with ice, allowing cometary activity to occur around the actual spacecraft, creates perfect cover. Observational equipment: sensors, cameras, spectrometers, whatever instruments the builders deemed necessary for scientific return. Now compare this theoretical design to 3i Atlas's observed characteristics. Structural integrity after billions of years. Check power source capable of generating heat. Water production suggests internal heating consistent with nuclear power. Minimal propulsion for trajectory maintenance. The precision suggests either massive inertia or active correction. Camouflage as natural object. Cometary activity creates perfect cover. Trajectory optimized for planetary observation. Sequential encounters with Mars. Earth-Jupiter, the fit is uncomfortable close. If 3i Atlas is artificial, might it be capable of self-replication? This isn't science fiction. It's serious theoretical framework explored by NASA and other space agencies. The von Neumann probe concept offers solution to galactic exploration paradox. How does a civilization explore billions of stars without building billions of individual spacecraft? Answer: build one sophisticated probe capable of self-replication. Send it to a target system. It studies that system, then uses local resources, asteroids, comets, whatever material is available to construct copies of itself. Those copies spread to additional systems, repeating the process. exponential growth. Within a few million years, trivial on cosmic timescales, the entire galaxy could be surveyed by descendants of a single probe. Remote viewers' reports of 3I Atlas potentially deploying smaller craft align disturbingly well with this scenario. If the object releases probe-sized vehicles during its solar system passage, we could be witnessing replication phase beginning. The implications are staggering. Even a single successful probe deployment, one craft that reaches Earth or begins harvesting asteroid materials, could lead to our solar system becoming filled with monitoring technology within decades or centuries. Humanity is already planning interstellar missions that provide template for understanding how artificial 3I Atlas might work. Breakthrough Starshot, announced in 2016 by Stephen Hawking and Yuri Milner, proposes sending thousands of tiny probes each about the size of a smartphone to Alpha Centauri using light sails pushed by powerful lasers. Travel time 20 years at 20% light speed. Each probe would carry cameras and sensors. Communication laser for transmitting data back to Earth, minimal computation for basic operations. Mass approximately 1 gram. If humanity can design such probes with early 21st century technology, what might a civilization millions of years more advanced build? They might create probes that self-repair using nanotechnology, harvest materials from interstellar dust during flight, carry sufficient computation to make autonomous decisions, adapt mission parameters based on observations, deploy secondary craft for detailed investigation. 3I Atlas could be the mothership for such a fleet, the larger transport vehicle, carrying thousands or millions of smaller probes, arriving at our solar system and dispersing them to study planets, moons, and potentially make contact with any intelligence they detect. If 3I Atlas transmitted the WOW signal in 1977, what does that tell us about its mission? The signal appeared on the hydrogen line frequency 1420 MHz, universally recognized by any civilization capable of radio astronomy as significant. It lasted exactly 72 seconds, long enough to be noticed, but brief enough that casual surveys would miss it, requiring dedicated monitoring. This pattern suggests intentionality. We are here. We are aware you exist. We are observing you. The 48-year gap between signal and arrival makes sense if the object was still approaching, still in the outer solar system, announcing its presence long before it became visible in telescopes. Why announce yourself? Perhaps to give recipient civilization time to prepare. Perhaps to test for responses watching, to see if we attempt to communicate back. Perhaps as warning, we're coming, be ready. Here's where the hypothesis enters controversial territory, where evidence thins and speculation thickens. The U.S. government shutdown that began October 1, 2025, just 2 days before 3I Atlas's closest approach to Mars, shut down NASA's public communications. No press releases, no image processing, no social media updates. The timing could be coincidence. Government shutdowns happen due to budget disagreements, and October 1st marks the federal fiscal year, begin a common deadline for funding lapses. But consider if NASA's Mars orbiters captured images showing obvious artificial structures on 3I Atlas. Immediate public release would trigger mass panic. Markets would crash. Religious institutions would face crisis. Social order could break down. The rational response classify the data. Brief decision-makers coordinate. International response control the information flow until prepared for managed disclosure. I'm not claiming this happened. I'm noting that if it did happen, we'd see exactly what we're seeing. Technical delays, minimal image release, coordinated silence across multiple space agencies, and eventual carefully worded statements that neither confirm nor deny the extraordinary. If 3I Atlas's artificial specific observations in coming months could confirm this Test 1 electromagnetic emissions, artificial objects emit heat in infrared bands and possibly radio frequencies for communication or navigation. Natural comets emit thermally but lack radio signatures. Monitoring across electromagnetic spectrum, particularly in frequencies used for spacecraft communication, could reveal artificial emissions. Test 2. Structural geometry. High-resolution imaging might reveal geometric structures, straight edges, right angles, regular spacing that don't occur naturally. The hexagonal patterns reported by remote viewers, if confirmed by telescopes, would be significant. Test 3. Probe deployment. If smaller objects separate from 3I Atlas and follow trajectories inconsistent with passive debris, that's evidence of intentional deployment. Test 4. Course corrections. If 3I Atlas changes velocity or direction in ways not explained by gravitational forces or outgassing thrust, that's evidence of active propulsion. Test 5. Communication attempts. If the object transmits radio signals, particularly in response to our signals directed at it, that's evidence of intelligent communication. None of these tests have yet yielded positive results. We haven't detected artificial signals. We haven't observed obvious structures. We haven't seen probe deployment. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, especially when observational coverage has been limited and data release partial. The Fermi paradox asks if the galaxy is billions of years old, if intelligent life is common. Why haven't we seen obvious evidence of alien civilizations? 3I Atlas might be the answer. They're here, they've always been here, quietly observing, camouflaged as natural objects, following protocols that prevent overt contact until recipient civilizations reach sufficient maturity. The zoo hypothesis that Earth is a protected preserve, deliberately left uncontacted, gains plausibility if monitoring probes exist. We're not alone because we've been ignored. We're alone because we're being watched, and the watchers have decided to remain hidden until conditions warrant contact. Here's what I believe based on current evidence. 3I Atlas being artificial is possible but not proven. The accumulated anomalies make this hypothesis worth serious consideration, worth investigation, worth testing through continued observation. But, and this is crucial, wanting something to be true doesn't make it true. The human desire for cosmic significance, for vindication, that we're not alone, for meaning in a vast universe, these desires can bias our interpretation of ambiguous data. The artificial hypothesis should receive approximately 15% of our confidence, enough to warrant investigation, not enough to base conclusions on. We need more data. Better images, electromagnetic monitoring, behavioral observations over time, and we need intellectual humility to acknowledge when speculation has outpaced evidence. December will tell us more. The observations might confirm natural origin, might reveal artificial characteristics, or might simply deepen the mystery. Until then, the artificial hypothesis remains what it should be: a possibility worth investigating, but not a conclusion to embrace prematurely. October 3rd, 2025 will be remembered either as a missed scientific opportunity of historic proportions, or as the day humanity captured evidence too extraordinary to immediately release. As 3I Atlas made its closest approach to Mars, passing within 26 million kilometers of the red planet, 7 different spacecraft from 4 national space programs had front-row seats to observe this unprecedented encounter. What they saw, or more precisely, what has been released from what they saw, forms a puzzle that grows more intriguing with each piece of information that surfaces. Let me walk you through what we know, what we suspect, and what remains disturbingly absent from the public record. Mars orbit is crowded by interplanetary standards. Multiple active missions give us unprecedented coverage. European Space Agency, ExoMars Trace, gas orbiter, equipped with high-resolution cameras and spectrometers designed to detect trace gases in Mars's atmosphere, instruments perfectly suited for analyzing 3I Atlas's emissions. Mars Express, ESA's longest-serving Mars orbiter, carrying the HRSC camera capable of detailed imaging. NASA. Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter carries
HiRISE, the most powerful camera ever sent to another planet, capable of resolving features as small as 30 centimeters from Mars orbit. MAVEN atmospheric mission with ultraviolet spectrograph perfect for observing cometary gas. Perseverance rover surface-based, equipped with cameras that can observe bright objects in the Martian sky. China Tianwen-1 orbiter and rover mission with sophisticated imaging equipment. UAE Hope orbiter, equipped with high-resolution imager and infrared spectrometer. 7 spacecraft. Multiple viewing angles. Instruments across the electromagnetic spectrum. This was the most comprehensively observed interstellar object flyby in human history. The anticipation in the astronomical community was palpable. Finally, we'd get detailed data on 3I Atlas's structure, composition, and behavior during a close encounter with a planet. Finally, we'd answer the questions that had been accumulating since July. And then, silence. On October 7th, 4 days after closest approach, ESA released exactly one image, a short animated GIF from the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, showing 3I Atlas as a bright white dot moving against background stars. One image from 7 spacecraft. The official explanation: data processing takes time, mission priorities focused on Mars rather than transient targets, limited bandwidth for data downlink. All technically true. All insufficient to explain the comprehensive information blackout. While official channels remained silent, the amateur astronomy community refused to wait. Simeon Schmaus, an astrophotographer and planetary scientist, began searching through publicly available raw image archives from Mars missions. NASA's Perseverance rover automatically uploads raw images to a public server, a transparency initiative designed to let anyone explore Mars through the rover's eyes. Hidden in these routine uploads, Schmaus found something extraordinary. Multiple image sequences showing a bright streak in the Martian sky captured over several sols. Martian days in early October. The streak moved against background stars. Its position and motion matched 3I Atlas's predicted path through Mars's sky. Schmaus downloaded hundreds of frames, applied stacking techniques to improve signal-to-noise ratio, and published his analysis. 3I Atlas was clearly visible from Mars's surface during the flyby, and its shape was wrong. Not a diffuse smudge as you'd expect from a comet's coma. Not a simple point source like a distant star, but elongated, structured, almost cylindrical. "I've processed thousands of cometary images," Schmaus wrote in his analysis. "This doesn't look like any comet I've seen. The elongation could be motion blur exposure time streaking the object's path, but there's also what appears to be internal structure, regions of different brightness, features that remain consistent across multiple frames." His work went viral. YouTube videos analyzing the images accumulated millions of views. Astronomy forums erupted in debate, and NASA remained silent. Other researchers took Schmaus's work further, using advanced image processing techniques, deconvolution algorithms that sharpen blurred features, edge detection that highlights structural boundaries. They extracted additional detail from the pixelated low-resolution images. What emerged from these enhanced images is controversial because enhancement can create artifacts, features that appear real but result from the processing algorithm rather than actual structure in the target. But multiple independent researchers using different processing methods reported similar results. Angular features inconsistent with natural irregular shapes, brightness variations suggesting distinct sections or modules, possible hexagonal patterns matching remote viewing descriptions, asymmetric light distribution unlike typical cometary comae. Are these real? Or are we seeing computational artifacts amplified by wishful thinking without higher resolution original data? We can't definitively say. And that higher resolution data exists. High-rise images that should show 3I Atlas at 30 cm per pixel resolution, but remains unreleased. Perhaps more troubling than missing images is missing spectroscopy.
Every Mars orbiter carries spectrometers capable of analyzing light from 3I Atlas to determine composition, temperature, gas emissions, and chemical processes. This data should be straightforward to process and release. It's numbers, graphs, spectra. No image processing complexity. No bandwidth constraints. Just scientific data of the type routinely published within days of acquisition. Yet months after the flyby, no major space agency has released comprehensive spectroscopic analysis of 3I Atlas during the Mars encounter. Leaked information, anonymous posts on scientific forums, unverified claims from alleged mission personnel suggests that spectroscopy revealed anomalies that require additional analysis before publication. The specific nature of these anomalies remains classified or, at minimum, deliberately unreleased. This is where the investigation takes a darker turn, venturing into territory that mainstream planetary science rejects, but that accumulating evidence makes increasingly difficult to ignore. Dr. John Brandenburg, a plasma physicist who worked on the Strategic Defense Initiative and has spent decades studying Martian geology, has proposed something that sounds like science fiction. Mars didn't just lose its atmosphere through gradual solar wind erosion, it was destroyed deliberately by thermonuclear explosions. The evidence Brandenburg points to isotopic signatures, elevated levels of certain isotopes, particularly xenon 129, which forms during nuclear fission. The atmospheric ratios don't match expectations from natural radioactive decay or cosmic ray bombardment. They match what you see in terrestrial nuclear test sites.
Geographic concentration. Two regions on Mars, Cydonia Mensae and Galaxias Chaos, show particularly high concentrations of these isotopes, suggesting localized explosions rather than global processes. Atmospheric anomalies. The ratio of atmospheric argon on Mars is anomalous compared to models of planetary formations, suggesting violent atmospheric stripping beyond what slow solar wind erosion would produce. Surface features. Fused glass deposits, unusual mineral formations, and specific crustal compositions that Brandenburg argues are more consistent with high-energy impacts or explosions than with natural geological processes. Mainstream planetary science dismisses this hypothesis, arguing that natural processes can explain isotopic anomalies. Cydonia and Galaxias don't show definitive blast effects. Alternative explanations exist for atmospheric loss. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, fair criticisms. Brandenburg's hypothesis demands revision of our understanding of Mars's history and implies the existence of advanced civilizations in our solar system's past, claims that strain credibility. But, and this is worth considering, if ancient Mars did host technological civilization, if that civilization either self-destructed or was destroyed by external force, then 3I Atlas returning to check on the homeworld makes narrative sense. Remote viewer Bertie Jaworski's team perceived 3I Atlas as broadcasting signals designed to awaken dormant technology on Mars and possibly Europa. They described this as a homing beacon, the returning vessel checking whether anything on Mars still functions after millions of years. This interpretation requires accepting that Mars once hosted advanced civilization. That civilization built installations designed for extreme longevity. Those installations remain functional underground, shielded from radiation and erosion. 3I Atlas was launched by that civilization or allied civilization millions of years ago. Its return now represents scheduled check-in or response to some trigger we don't understand. Each assumption strains probability, but the combined probability, while low, isn't zero. If purely hypothetical, if this scenario were true, then 3I Atlas's precise trajectory past Mars becomes explained. Not coincidence. Not random gravitational focusing, but navigation. Targeting. the object following a flight plan that brings it close enough to Mars for observation and possible signal transmission without entering orbit without committing to stay, maintaining ability to continue toward other destinations. Mars exploration has revealed extensive lava tube networks, hollow chambers created by ancient volcanic activity, some potentially kilometers wide and tens of kilometers long. These tubes would provide perfect shelter protection from radiation, stable temperatures, isolation from surface conditions. If you wanted to build something that lasts millions of years, on Mars you'd build it underground in lava tubes. Surface installations would erode, be buried by dust, or be destroyed by the harsh environment. But deep underground, shielded by meters of rock installations, might remain functional indefinitely. We've barely begun exploring Mars's subsurface. Ground-penetrating radar from orbit has limitations. Rovers haven't accessed lava tube interiors. We literally don't know what's down there. The possibility that ancient installations exist dormant but not dead, waiting for appropriate signal to reactivate this, isn't impossible.
It's testable hypothesis waiting for appropriate investigation. Birdie's team also perceived connections to Europa Jupiter's ice-covered moon. Below Europa's frozen surface lies a subsurface ocean liquid water, possibly habitable, potentially hosting life. If 3I Atlas represents ancient civilization checking on multiple potential habitats in our solar system, Europa becomes obvious target. The object's trajectory will take it past Jupiter in March 2026, providing opportunity for Europa observation. ESA's JUICE spacecraft and NASA's Europa Clipper are both en route to the Jovian system, arriving in the late 2020s. If 3I Atlas interacts with Europa deploying probes, transmitting signals exhibiting specific behaviors during Jupiter encounter, we might finally get unambiguous evidence of intentionality. The comprehensive information blackout following the Mars flyby suggests one of two scenarios. Scenario 1. The observations revealed nothing particularly unusual beyond what ground-based telescopes had already detected. The processing delays are genuine. Images and spectra will eventually be released showing an exotic but natural comet. The silence reflects institutional caution rather than intentional suppression. Scenario 2. The observations revealed something sufficiently anomalous that immediate public release was deemed inadvisable. Images showing obvious artificial structures. Spectroscopy detecting impossible chemistries or behavioral observations. Suggesting active systems would require coordinated international response before public disclosure. The silence reflects information management during preparation for unprecedented announcement. I don't know which scenario is correct. Nobody outside classified briefing rooms knows for certain, but the pattern-coordinated silence across multiple agencies and nations leaked information suggesting anomalies requiring additional analysis. Simultaneous government shutdown affecting primary space agency creates appearance of information control rather than routine processing delays. 3I Atlas's next major milestone is December emergence from solar conjunction. When it becomes observable again, if it shows signs of having deployed objects during perihelion passage, if smaller craft are detected moving on trajectories independent of the main body, then the Mars flyby takes on new significance. Perhaps what happened at Mars, whatever was observed, whatever wasn't released, was reconnaissance, assessment, the object studying Mars's current state, determining whether surface conditions permit landing, whether subsurface installations remain accessible, whether anything remains to be recovered or reactivated.
And based on that assessment, decisions might be made during perihelion about next phase of mission deployment, landing, transmission of findings, or simply continuation outward, carrying observations to whatever destination awaits. This is speculation, but it's speculation grounded in anomalies that accumulate faster than explanations resolve them.
Remote viewing forces us to confront questions that make materialist science uncomfortable. What is consciousness? Is it merely an emergent property of neural activity, or does it possess properties that transcend physical substrate? Can awareness genuinely perceive across distances without physical mediation? These aren't new questions. Philosophy has grappled with the mind-body problem for millennia, but 3-Eye Atlas remote viewing sessions bring them into sharp, practical focus.
Standard physics offers no mechanism for consciousness to perceive distant objects without information traveling at light speed through conventional channels. Electromagnetic radiation, gravitational waves, neutrinos, all the known information carriers propagate at or below light speed. For remote viewing to work as claimed, one of several unlikely things must be true. Possibility 1. Quantum. Entanglement of consciousness. Quantum mechanics allows entangled particles to exhibit correlated properties instantaneously across distance, seemingly violating light-speed information transfer. But this correlation doesn't actually transmit information. You can't encode messages in quantum entanglement. Some researchers have speculated that consciousness might involve quantum processes in neural microtubules, as proposed in the OR orchestrated objective reduction theory by Penrose and Hameroff. If consciousness genuinely operates on quantum substrate, perhaps entanglement between observer and observed could facilitate non-local perception. But this requires quantum coherence to survive in warm, wet, noisy biological environments, something mainstream quantum physics considers highly unlikely. Possibility 2. Unknown. Information field. Perhaps consciousness accesses information through a field or medium we haven't detected. Carl Jung's collective unconscious proposed that human minds share deep archetypal structures. Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance suggests that information propagates through fields beyond space-time. These ideas exist outside mainstream physics, but offer frameworks for thinking about non-local awareness. If such fields exist, they'd need to carry information about distant objects while remaining undetected by our instruments, a difficult requirement. Possibility 3. Retrocausality and time loops. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics allow information to flow backward in time. If remote viewers are accessing future observations of 3-Eye Atlas, seeing what telescopes will eventually confirm, they're not perceiving across space but across time. This would explain why remote viewing works best when the target will eventually be observed by conventional means. The future observation creates information that propagates backward, becoming accessible to sufficiently sensitive consciousness. Possibility 4. Statistical artifact. The skeptical explanation remote viewing successes result from confirmation bias. Cold reading probability and selective reporting. Humans are pattern-matching machines. Give us vague impressions and we'll find ways to match them to targets after the fact.
The convergence across 6 independent 3-Eye Atlas sessions might reflect cultural contamination, shared expectations about alien spacecraft drawn from decades of science fiction rather than genuine perception. Carl Jung proposed that human consciousness shares deep structures, archetypes that transcend individual experience. The collective unconscious contains symbols, patterns, and narratives that appear across cultures despite lack of direct contact. Applied to remote viewing, perhaps what viewers perceive isn't 3-Eye Atlas itself, but archetypal patterns associated with alien contact, ancient travelers, technological beings. The convergence reflects shared psychological structures rather than accurate perception. The biological mechanical fusion that all 6 viewers described. That's the archetype of integration wholeness, the union of opposite central symbols in Jungian psychology appearing across human mythology, the sense of being looked back at. That's the archetype of the self, the observing consciousness that watches our watching, the eternal witness. The descriptions might be psychologically true, revealing deep structures of human consciousness without being literally accurate about 3-Eye Atlas. Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance theory proposes that patterns of organization propagate through fields that transcend space-time. When something occurs, it becomes easier for similar things to occur elsewhere, not through physical causation, but through resonance across morphic fields. If stillness is artificial, if it was designed and built, then that design exists as pattern in morphic field. Remote viewers might be accessing this pattern, perceiving the form of the object through resonance with its organizational blueprint. This would explain why viewers describe hexagonal structures, layered metallics, biological mechanical integration. They're perceiving the design principles rather than the physical object. Mainstream science rejects morphic resonance as untestable pseudoscience, but it offers explanatory framework for phenomena that materialist models struggle with. Multiple remote viewers reported the eerie sensation of being observed back attention, meeting attention across impossible distances. This mirror phenomenon appears regularly in remote viewing and contactee literature. Psychological explanation projection. We externalize our own observing consciousness, creating illusion of reciprocal gaze. The other that looks back is actually our own awareness reflected. But there's another interpretation. If consciousness genuinely extends beyond physical substrate, then the act of observation creates connection. When we look at 3i Atlas psychically, we're not passively receiving information, we're establishing relationship. And relationship is bidirectional by definition. This mirrors findings in quantum mechanics, where observation affects the observed. Perhaps at consciousness level, this isn't metaphor, but literal. To observe is to interact, and interaction means mutual influence. Patricia's description, "It noticed when I looked and looked back," might describe genuine phenomenological experience, even if mechanism remains mysterious. How do we validate remote viewing findings? Traditional approach: compare viewer impressions against objective data about target. Success rates exceeding chance suggest genuine perception. But 3i Atlas presents unique challenge. We don't yet have definitive objective data. The hexagonal patterns, the internal structures, the biological mechanical fusion, these remain unverified by conventional observation. So we're left with prediction if viewers accurately describe features that telescopic observation later confirms. That strengthens the remote viewing hypothesis. If their descriptions prove consistently wrong, that weakens it. December observations become crucial test. If high-resolution imaging shows hexagonal surface patterns matching John Dixon's drawings, that's significant validation. If imaging shows nothing resembling viewer descriptions, that suggests they perceived imagination rather than reality. Even if remote viewing doesn't provide scientifically rigorous data, it might serve valuable investigative function hypothesis generation. The viewers raised possibilities that conventional astronomy might not have considered: interior chambers suggesting hollowness. Deployed smaller craft connections to Mars and Europa. Consciousness that observes back. These ideas now guide observational programs. Telescopes are looking for evidence of probe deployment. Spectrometers are checking for chemical signatures consistent with complex technology. Radio observatories are monitoring for transmissions. Remote viewing provided direction for conventional investigation. Whether the specific claims prove accurate matters less than whether they prompted us to look more carefully. The most profound implication, if remote viewing works: if consciousness genuinely perceives non-locally, then awareness might be fundamental feature of universe rather than emergent property of biological complexity. Panpsychism. The philosophical position that consciousness is ubiquitous gains plausibility. Perhaps all information processing systems possess some degree of awareness. Atoms, molecules, organisms, planets. Each level of organization associated with corresponding level of consciousness. 3i's Atlas.
whether natural or artificial, might possess awareness simply by virtue of being complex, organized system. The remote viewers didn't perceive across empty space, they perceived through medium of consciousness that pervades all existence. This is speculation far beyond current science. But 3i Atlas forces us to ask, what if consciousness isn't confined to brains? What if it's the fundamental stuff of reality, and matter is merely consciousness in particular patterns? These questions don't have answers yet, but asking them expands possibilities, challenges assumptions, opens territory for exploration beyond conventional materialism. After tomorrow's perihelion passage, 3i Atlas disappears behind the sun from Earth's perspective, entering a blind spot that will last until early November. For 2 weeks, humanity will be unable to observe directly what might be the most significant event in our species' history. When it emerges in early December, when our telescopes can once again track our interstellar visitor, we'll know. Either it will be fragmenting like any natural comet stressed by solar heating, confirming our comfortable assumptions about cosmic solitude, or it will be intact, possibly accompanied by deployed craft, forcing us to grapple with implications we've been carefully avoiding. The November 21st to December 5th window that Avi Loeb identified represents more than favorable viewing conditions. It's when orbital mechanics align for potential Earth intercept trajectories. Here's why any probes released at perihelion need approximately 20 days to position themselves for Earth approach. The specific timing depends on launch velocity and trajectory, but the physics is straightforward. There's a narrow window when the geometry works, when minimal delta V produces maximum effect. If 3i Atlas was designed for reconnaissance, its creators calculated these windows billions of years ago. The trajectory that seemed randomly aligned with our planetary orbits, it was optimized for exactly this moment when probe deployment becomes most efficient. ESA's Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer JUICE occupies unique vantage point. Currently traveling toward Jupiter, it's positioned to observe 3i Atlas during and immediately after perihelion passage from angles impossible for Earth-based telescopes. JUICE carries sophisticated instruments, Janus camera for high-resolution optical imaging, Magus spectrometer covering visible to infrared wavelengths, UVS ultraviolet spectrograph for gas emissions, particle detectors for measuring local space environment. These instruments capture 3i Atlas as it swings around the sun, recording any changes in brightness, structure, or emissions. If the object fragments, JUICE will document the breakup. If it deploys objects, JUICE might detect them. And this is significant, JUICE is currently using its main antenna as heat shield while close to sun, communicating with Earth through lower gain backup antenna. Data downlink rates are severely limited. The observations occur in November, but full data won't reach Earth until February 2026. By then, 3i Atlas will have continued its journey past Earth, approaching Jupiter. Whatever happened during perihelion will be historical fact, not unfolding mystery. While JUICE observes from space, Earth-based telescopes are mobilizing the most comprehensive observation campaign for any astronomical target in recent history. Very Large Telescope VLT in Chile, 4 8.2-meter telescopes that can work together for unprecedented resolution. Keck Observatory in Hawaii, twin 10-meter telescopes with adaptive optics. Gran Telescopio Canarias in Spain, 10.4-meter aperture for deep imaging. Subaru Telescope in Hawaii, wide field of view for surveying large areas. Each facility has dedicated observation time in November-December. Coordination through International Astronomical Union ensures comprehensive coverage across wavelengths and viewing angles. Allen Telescope, Array, dedicated SETI instrument designed for detecting artificial transmissions, very large array. VLA, 27 antennas working in concert. FAST Telescope in China, world's largest single-dish radio telescope. Meerkat Array in South Africa, 64 dishes providing southern hemisphere coverage.
The radio astronomy community has developed specific protocols for November observations. If 3E Atlas transmitted the WOW signal in 1977, it might transmit again as it departs our solar system. The hydrogen line frequency, 1420 MHz, will be monitored continuously. Professional observatories operate on tight schedules with competing demands. Amateur astronomers provide flexibility and persistence that complements formal programs. Thousands of amateur telescopes worldwide coordinated through online platforms like the AAVSO American Association of Variable Star Observers and specific 3I Atlas monitoring networks will track the object continuously through November and December. Their role is crucial, detecting transient events that professional observatories might miss, providing rapid alerts when something unusual occurs, gathering time series data that reveals behavioral patterns. Amateur observers already discovered key details during 3I Atlas's approach. Their contribution will only increase as the object becomes more accessible to modest equipment. If 3I Atlas releases smaller craft during perihelion detection, will be challenging but possible. The probes would likely be small, meter-sized, or less, essentially invisible at astronomical distances.
But they wouldn't remain invisible if they're active thermal signatures. Any probe using power, even modest amounts, emits heat detectable in infrared wavelengths. Wide-field infrared surveys could detect multiple objects moving on trajectories independent of 3I Atlas. Radar reflection. If probes have metallic surfaces, planetary radar facilities, Arecibo is gone, but Goldstone and Green Bank remain, could potentially detect them through reflection. Occultation events. If a probe passes in front of a background star, it creates brief dimming detectable by wide-field survey telescopes. Multiple occultations from different objects would reveal probe swarm, communications emissions. If probes communicate with each other or with 3I Atlas, those transmissions might be detectable, even if not intended for us.
The search strategy involves casting widest possible net, multiple observatories, multiple wavelengths, multiple detection methods, all focused on the region of space where 3I Atlas passed and where deployed objects would now be traveling. If probes are capable of self-replication, using asteroid materials to build copies, our solar system could be colonized by alien technology within our lifetimes. Think about the exponential growth. One probe arrives, harvests materials from asteroid, builds 2 copies. Those copies each build 2 more. Generation time might be months or years, but the math is inexorable. Within decades, thousands of probes. Within century, millions. Each generation improves on previous design using local materials and updated algorithms. Evolution operates on technological rather than biological substrate, but principles remain: same, variation, selection, reproduction. The endgame: every planet, moon, asteroid, and significant object in solar system monitored by probes. Comprehensive surveillance network reporting to whom? Where does data go? What decisions are made based on observations? We might never see the civilization that sent 3I Atlas, but their machines' autonomous, self-improving patient could become permanent feature of our cosmic neighborhood. Future Forecasting Group and other remote viewing collectives consistently identify December 2025 as critical juncture, not just for 3I Atlas, but for humanity's trajectory. The prophecy describes timeline fork. One path leads toward integration, consciousness, expansion, benevolent contact. The other path leads toward conflict, fear-based response, potential catastrophe. Which timeline manifests depends on collective choices made in December's immediate aftermath. If 3I Atlas deploys objects, if evidence of artificial origin becomes undeniable, how does humanity respond? Response. Path 1, curiosity. We treat deployment as opportunity rather than threat. Scientists mobilize to study, communicate, understand. Governments coordinate but remain transparent.
Public discourse emphasizes wonder over fear. We present ourselves as ready for contact worthy of interaction. In this timeline, the probes recognize receptive consciousness and initiate communication. Technology is shared. Understanding expands. Humanity takes first steps toward cosmic community. Response. Path 2. Fear. We treat deployment as invasion. Military assets activate. Attempts to intercept, disable, or destroy deployed craft. Information control to prevent panic. Public discourse emphasizes danger over opportunity. We present ourselves as defensive tribal, not yet ready. In this timeline, probes recognize hostility and withdraw or respond defensively. The window for positive contact closes. Humanity remains isolated, having failed the test. This prophecy framework is speculative, based on remote viewing sessions that can't be verified. But it captures real choice. How we respond to unknowns reveals what we are and shapes what we might become. Serious question: how does global civilization prepare for potential first contact scenario? There's no established protocol. The United Nations has no contact response team ready to deploy. National governments have competing interests and would struggle to coordinate. Religious institutions face existential crisis if contact confirms we're not unique. Social order depends on assumptions that might evaporate. The rational response: prepare quietly. Brief decision makers. Develop communication strategies. Establish international coordination mechanisms. Control information flow until prepared for managed disclosure. But this rational response looks identical to cover-up. The public sees silence delays, classified briefings, and reasonably concludes they're being lied to. The contradiction is unresolvable. Premature disclosure risks panic and chaos, but secrecy breeds distrust and conspiracy theories. There's no clean path forward if December brings confirmation of artificial origin. Financial markets provide interesting signal. Derivative positions show unusual patterns. Someone with resources is betting on significant announcements in November-December timeframe. Options volatility spiking. Aerospace and defense stocks showing unexplained movements. Companies specializing in deep space communication receiving large orders. The smart money appears to be positioning for revelation. This could be noise, random fluctuations that only appear meaningful in retrospect. Or it could indicate insider knowledge, leaked briefings, decision makers positioning themselves before public knows what they know.
Following the money sometimes reveals truths that official statements conceal. Beyond institutional preparation, individual psychological preparation matters. If December confirms we're not alone, if alien technology is documented in our solar system, how does that change your life? For some, confirmation brings relief. The universe is populated, we're not unique, meaning exists beyond terrestrial concerns. The loneliness of cosmic isolation lifts. For others, confirmation triggers existential crisis, religious frameworks crumble, assumptions about human importance evaporate, fear of unknown dominates. Mental health professionals are quietly preparing for potential surge in anxiety, depression, and meaning crisis if contact becomes undeniable. Support networks are being established, resources prepared, though publicly the connection to 3i Atlas remains unspoken. The psychological impact of confirmed alien intelligence would be profound, touching every aspect of human self-understanding and social organization. Specific observables in December will constrain possibilities. Fragmentation. If 3i Atlas breaks apart, natural origin becomes much more likely. No spacecraft survives perihelion, then fragments afterward. Intact structure. If object emerges structurally intact, showing no signs of thermal damage, artificial origin probability increases significantly. Probe detection. Multiple objects on independent trajectories would confirm deployment, essentially proving artificial origin. Course corrections. Any change in velocity or direction inconsistent with gravity and outgassing would prove active propulsion. Communications radio or laser transmissions directed toward Earth or other destinations would prove intelligent control. Chemical changes. New spectroscopic signatures appearing post-perihelion might indicate system activation or internal processes beginning. Every telescope, every instrument, every observer will be watching for these signals. December will either answer questions or multiply them exponentially.
Let's engage in a thought experiment. Not prediction, not claim, just exploration of what different 3I Atlas scenarios would mean for our understanding of existence consciousness and humanity's place in the cosmos. If hypothesis 1 is true natural object, if 3I Atlas proves to be an unusual but natural comet, what have we learned? First, the universe is stranger than our current models allow. A 7-billion-year-old object preserving exotic chemistry from stellar environments we've never sampled, demonstrating ice physics we didn't know existed. This alone revolutionizes planetary science and astrochemistry. The implications ripple outward. If interstellar space can preserve complex materials for billions of years, then panspermia becomes not just possible but probable. Life's building blocks, organic molecules, water, possibly even primitive organisms, could travel between stellar systems, seeding countless worlds with chemical foundations for biology.
Earth might owe its existence to ancient interstellar travelers like 3I Atlas. The water in our oceans, the carbon in our bodies, the very molecules that make consciousness possible, all might be cosmic immigrants having journeyed through the galaxy before settling here. This natural scenario also tells us something profound about detection bias. We've observed exactly 3 confirmed interstellar objects in 8 years. The statistical models suggest thousands pass through our solar system annually, most too distant or faint to detect. We're sampling the tiniest fraction of interstellar traffic. The galaxy is full of wanderers. We're not isolated, we're embedded in constant cosmic exchange, just now developing instruments sensitive enough to observe it. If hypothesis 2 is true, unusual natural phenomena. If 3I Atlas represents rare but natural edge cases, dark matter interactions, exotic ice phases, rogue planetary cores, the implications become even more intriguing. Dark matter, comprising 85% of universal mass, remains invisible, detectable only through gravitational effects. If 3I Atlas demonstrates, dark matter can clump into macroscopic structures that revolutionizes cosmology. It means dark matter isn't just diffuse background, it forms objects. Possibly an entire shadow ecology of structures we haven't learned to observe. There could be dark matter planets, dark matter asteroids, perhaps even dark matter life operating through physics we don't understand. The universe would be far more populated than visible matter suggests. We'd be living in a cosmos teeming with invisible complexity. If 3I Atlas is a rogue planetary core that confirms planetary ejection happens commonly, our galaxy would contain billions of orphan worlds, former planets now wandering between stars carrying histories of civilizations that might have evolved on them before catastrophe struck. Some of these wanderers might still be habitable in their deep interiors, where radioactive decay provides heat, where subsurface oceans persist beneath frozen surfaces. Life might flourish in these hidden realms, unknown and undetectable, threading through galaxy like cosmic refugees. If hypothesis 3 is true, artificial origin. This is where implications become genuinely transformative, touching every aspect of human self-understanding. If 3I Atlas is artificial, someone built it. A civilization with technology capable of interstellar travel over billions of years, materials engineering that withstands cosmic radiation and micrometeorite impacts, energy systems operating for time spans longer than Earth has existed, navigation precision that targets specific stellar systems across galactic distances. This civilization would be Type 2 on Kardashev scale, able to harness energy of entire stars, manipulate matter at scales we can barely conceive, operate with temporal horizons measured in millions or billions of years. They might no longer exist. 7 billion years is enough time for civilizations to rise, flourish, and vanish countless times. 3i Atlas might be orphan technology still executing mission protocols for creators who became extinct before multicellular life emerged on Earth. Or they might have transcended uploaded consciousness to digital substrate merged with artificial intelligence, dispersed into pure information, or transformed into something we lack concepts to describe. The probe continues functioning while its creators move beyond physical existence. Or they're still there, somewhere in the galaxy patient, an ancient watching their seeds return from stellar systems they scouted billions of years ago. If 3i Atlas represents first confirmed alien technology, everything changes regarding contact protocols and cosmic sociology. The zoo hypothesis gains credibility. Earth is protected reserve deliberately left uncontacted until we reach sufficient maturity. The probe observes but doesn't interfere, recording our development for assessment by intelligences we've never met. Or we're being evaluated. Contact might depend on how we respond to ambiguous evidence, whether we react with curiosity or fear unity, or fragmentation wisdom or violence. Our response to 3i Atlas becomes test determining whether we're ready for broader cosmic community. This reframes Fermi paradox. They're not absent, they're selective. Contact happens when recipient civilizations demonstrate readiness through their handling of edge cases like 3i Atlas. If we could study 3i Atlas up close, board it, examine its systems, understand its engineering, the technological leap would be incomprehensible. Materials science. Alloys that survive billions of years in space would revolutionize construction. Energy systems, power sources operating for geological timespans, would solve every energy crisis. Propulsion technologies enabling interstellar travel would make us a spacefaring civilization overnight. But this creates geopolitical nightmare. Whoever controls 3i Atlas technology gains overwhelming advantage. Nations would compete, possibly fight for access. The scramble for alien technology could trigger conflicts, making resource wars seem trivial. Even sharing technology equally creates disruption. Industries become obsolete. Economic systems built on scarcity collapse when unlimited energy becomes available. Power structures depending on control of resources lose relevance. The transition could be smooth managed disclosure, coordinated development, equitable distribution, or chaotic theft, sabotage, technological terrorism, civilization destabilizing upheaval. If Atlas carries biological material, genetic samples, preserved organisms, digital consciousnesses, the implications for evolutionary biology and exobiology are staggering. We'd confirm life isn't unique to Earth. We'd access biology that evolved under completely different conditions, possibly operating on different chemical principles. Carbon-based life isn't universal requirement. Silicon-sulfur exotic chemistry might support biological complexity. If genetic material is compatible or could be made compatible with Earth biology, we face profound ethical questions. Do we introduce alien genetics into terrestrial ecosystems? Do we attempt to resurrect extinct alien species? Do we enhance humans with alien genetic sequences? The risk of contamination cuts both ways. Alien microorganisms might be harmless to their native environment, but catastrophic to Earth's biosphere. We could inadvertently trigger pandemic that no immune system is prepared for. Conversely, Earth biology might contaminate 3i Atlas, compromising scientific value and potentially threatening any living systems aboard. Major world religions would face crisis and opportunity. Scriptures written assuming Earth's uniqueness must be reinterpreted. Doctrines about humanity's special relationship with divine would require theological innovation. Some religious frameworks would adapt easily if God created universe. Alien intelligence is just another part of creation.
Buddhist and Hindu traditions, with their vast cosmic scales, might find confirmation rather than contradiction. Others would struggle religions centered on specific human salvation narratives on Earth, as stage for cosmic drama on humanity. As pinnacle of creation, these face existential challenge. But crisis creates opportunity for spiritual renewal. Perhaps contact forces humanity beyond tribal god concepts toward more universal understanding of whatever transcendent reality exists. Philosophy faces similar transformation. Consciousness studies, philosophy of mind, epistemology, ethics, all must expand to encompass non-human intelligence operating on completely different principles: free will, moral responsibility. The nature of consciousness itself, these questions become answerable through comparison with alien minds organized differently than ours.
If intelligence is common enough that probes launched billions of years ago reach us now, then conscious life isn't rare accident, but regular outcome of cosmic evolution. We're typical, not special. Our struggles, achievements, existential questions, all repeated countless times across galaxy in endless variations. This could be depressing our uniqueness, an illusion our importance negligible in cosmic scope. Or liberating, we're part of grand pattern, connected to vast community of conscious beings throughout space and time. The universe isn't empty stage where humanity plays out lonely drama. It's teeming with intelligence at various stages of development, each contributing to cosmos becoming aware of itself. If remote viewers and prophetic sources correctly identified December 2025 as critical juncture, this suggests future timelines exist as potentials accessible to consciousness under certain conditions. Prophecy isn't supernatural, but natural perception of probability, waves before they collapse into actuality. This validates idealist philosophy. Consciousness is fundamental matter emergent. Reality shaped by observation and intention as much as by physical law. The timeline fork concept humanity, splitting into divergent paths based on collective choices, isn't metaphor but description of how consciousness navigates probability space. Our response to 3i Atlas literally creates the future we'll inhabit. Not through physical causation, but through consciousness selecting which potential timeline to manifest. Regardless which hypothesis proves correct, 3i Atlas represents moment of transformation. Even negative result. Confirmed natural comet with conventional explanation for all anomalies transforms our understanding of interstellar chemistry and ice physics. But if the artificial hypothesis proves true, we cross threshold from cosmic children to cosmic adolescents. First contact marks before and after in species history, as significant as the emergence of consciousness itself. We join or become aware of galactic community that's existed far longer than humanity. Our history, all of recorded civilization, would be brief moment in larger story stretching billions of years into past and potentially billions more into future. The question isn't just what 3i Atlas is, it's what we become through learning the answer.
Let's talk about the elephant in the virtual room. The comprehensive information blackout following 3i Atlas's Mars encounter. The convenient timing of government shutdowns, the coordinated silence across multiple national space agencies.
Is this incompetence, conspiracy, or rational crisis management? The answer might be all three simultaneously. Let me present the facts chronologically without interpretation, then explore what they might mean. August 28, 2025. President Biden signs executive order redesignating NASA as National Intelligence and Security Agency. The order allows NASA data to be classified under national security protocols, restricting public access to observations deemed sensitive. September 30, 2025. Over 800 flag officers, generals, and admirals from all U.S. military branches are summoned to Quantico Marine Corps Base. Official reason: routine strategic briefing. unofficial speculation coordination for unprecedented scenario requiring military readiness. October 1st, 2025, U.S. government shutdown begins due to congressional budget impasse. NASA's public communication offices close. 15,000 employees furloughed. Website updates cease. October 3rd, 2025. 3I Atlas makes closest approach to Mars. 7 spacecraft positioned for observation. Minimal real-time communication from any space agency. October 7th, 2025. ESA releases single low-resolution image. NASA releases nothing official. Chinese, UAE, Indian space agencies remain silent. October 15th, 2025. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna personally intervenes with NASA administrator demanding resources be allocated to 3I Atlas observation despite shutdown. Individually, each event has innocent explanation. Collectively, they form pattern that invites questions about coordination. Let me steelman the conspiracy interpretation not because I endorse it, but because dismissing it without consideration is intellectually lazy. If NASA's Mars orbiters captured high-resolution images showing obvious artificial structures, geometric patterns, metallic surfaces, features that can't be natural immediate public release, would trigger global crisis. Stock markets would crash as investors flee to safety, uncertain what alien technology means for economic stability. Religious institutions would face existential questions that fracture congregations. Social order depends on assumptions about human uniqueness. Earth's centrality, the nature of reality, that would evaporate if alien intelligence is confirmed.
The rational response isn't transparency, but containment. Classify the data under national security protocols enabled by August Executive Order, brief military leadership, September Quantico gathering, to ensure defense readiness, create information blackout, October shutdown preventing premature leaks, coordinate with international partners to ensure unified messaging, prepare public gradually through managed disclosure rather than shock announcement. This isn't nefarious, it's crisis management. The conspiracy isn't to harm public, but to protect public from information they're not psychologically prepared to process. Now steelman the opposite interpretation. There's no conspiracy, just bureaucratic dysfunction amplified by bad timing. Government shutdowns happen. October 1st marks fiscal year beginning, common date for funding lapses when Congress fails to pass budgets.
The shutdown genuinely forced NASA communication offices to close, genuinely delayed data processing, genuinely created observation gaps. The Mars spacecraft observations did occur, but data processing takes time. High-resolution imagery requires careful calibration. Spectroscopic analysis needs peer review before publication. Scientists don't rush results because public is impatient. They maintain standards because credibility depends on accuracy. ESA released what they had processed by October 7th, a quick look image sufficient to confirm 3I Atlas was observed, but not sufficient for scientific analysis. More detailed results will come when analysis completes, probably in coming months. The silence from Chinese, UAE, and Indian agencies reflects their normal operating procedures. These programs don't prioritize rapid public communication. They publish through peer-reviewed journals on their own timelines. The coordinated silence isn't coordination, it's coincidence.
Multiple agencies independently following standard protocols that all happen to involve delays. Occam's razor suggests the simplest explanation: terrestrial stupidity, not extraterrestrial intelligence. We're witnessing the normal government dysfunction during observation of unusual but ultimately natural comet. Here's middle position: something genuinely anomalous was observed, not definitively artificial but ambiguous enough to warrant caution. Images show features that could be artificial but might be natural under exotic conditions. Spectroscopy reveals chemistry that's unexpected but potentially explainable. Behavioral observations show patterns that seem purposeful but could be coincidental. The data is genuinely unclear. Scientists disagree about interpretation.
Some argue for natural explanation, others for artificial origin. Many remain genuinely uncertain. In this scenario, classification isn't cover-up, but prudence. Release ambiguous data and two things happen. First, media sensationalizes headlines, scream, "Alien ship confirmed," based on preliminary uncertain findings. Public panic ensues before scientists can properly analyze. Second, premature announcement damages credibility if later analysis shows natural explanation. The "boy who cried alien problem, future genuine discoveries" would be dismissed. So authorities choose delay, complete analysis first, reach consensus among expert community, coordinate international response, prepare public messaging that's honest about uncertainty while conveying appropriate seriousness. This is responsible information management, not conspiracy. The goal is accuracy and stability, not control. But there's darker possibility worth considering. Elements within government and intelligence communities want to use 3I Atlas artificial, or not to advance agendas unrelated to the object itself. Project Blue Beam. The conspiracy theory dating to 1990s proposes exactly this staged alien invasion using holographic technology to justify creation of one world government population control measures and authoritarian power consolidation. Most researchers dismiss Bluebeam as too elaborate, requiring technologies and coordination beyond any government's capability, but replace holograms with actual ambiguous interstellar object, and you don't need to fake anything, just control interpretation. Frame 3I Atlas as threat regardless of actual intent. Use fear of alien invasion to justify military buildups and defense spending, increases surveillance expansions for planetary security, international governance structures superseding national sovereignty, resource nationalization and economic controls, movement restrictions and lockdowns for cosmic threat preparedness. The pandemic of 2020 demonstrated how quickly populations accept extraordinary restrictions when presented with invisible threat framed as existential. 3I Atlas offers similar opportunity threat that's real enough to observe, but ambiguous enough to interpret, however serves power interests. This isn't about hiding aliens, it's about exploiting alien ambiguity to advance terrestrial agendas. Consider possibility that multiple governments know approximately the same things about 3I Atlas, but are withholding from each other and from public for strategic advantage. If U.S. captured images suggesting artificial origin, revealing this information gives adversaries time to prepare, to develop counter-strategies to position themselves for technology access. Better to keep silent, maintain intelligence advantage, develop contingencies without tipping off competitors. Same logic applies to China, Russia, European nations. Everyone plays intelligence game, hoarding information, trying to interpret others' silence while concealing their own knowledge. The information vacuum isn't conspiracy, it's Cold War dynamics applied to cosmic context. Each nation trying to gain advantage while preventing others from doing same. The insurance industry's silence is particularly telling. Insurance companies employ actuaries whose entire job is modeling risk and pricing accordingly. They assess hurricanes, earthquakes, pandemics, solar flares, anything that could cause widespread damage and trigger claims. 3I Atlas represents potential risk on unprecedented scale. If artificial, if potentially hostile, the economic disruption could exceed any natural disaster. Yet insurance sector has published 0 public risk assessments, 0 white papers, 0 premium adjustments for cosmic threat exposure. This suggests either option A, they've assessed 3I Atlas as negligible risk, just a comet, nothing to worry about, no actuarial adjustment needed. Option B, they've been advised through unofficial channels that public discussion isn't in anyone's interest, creating panic-triggering market instability, causing economic disruption that dwarfs any actual physical threat the object might pose. Option C, They've assessed risk as uninsurable. If 3i Atlas represents existential threat, no amount of premium collection and capital reserves matter. You can't insure against apocalypse. The silence could reflect any of these. But the fact that industry built on risk assessment isn't publicly acknowledging a risk that Harvard astronomers rank at 40% probability of being artificial, that's suspicious. Here's fundamental contradiction: premature disclosure risks. Panic and chaos, but secrecy breeds distrust and conspiracy theories. If authorities know something definitive about 3i Atlas, they face impossible choice. Disclose immediately. Honest, transparent respects. Public right to know, but triggers. Panic, market crashes, potential social breakdown before support systems are in place. Disclose gradually. Leak information, slowly prepare public through managed process. Coordinate. International response, ensure stability. But looks identical to cover-up breeds. Conspiracy theories erodes trust. There's no clean solution. Either path has costs. Authorities must choose which costs are acceptable, which risks are manageable. From outside, we can't distinguish between slow disclosure to prevent panic and cover-up to maintain control. The processes look identical until outcome reveals intent, and by then damage to trust might be irreversible. If dramatic cover-up were occurring, we'd expect whistleblowers. NASA employs thousands of scientists and engineers. Space agencies worldwide involve tens of thousands of people. Conspiracy requiring this many participants, maintaining perfect silence strains credibility. Yet we've had no credible whistleblower with direct evidence, no leaked classified documents, no insider revelation with verification. This suggests either nothing dramatic to cover up the silence reflects routine processing delays, classification, and compartmentalization, so effective that most participants don't know what they're participating in. Whistleblowers exist but are being suppressed through methods we don't observe. The absence of whistleblowers doesn't prove absence of cover-up, but it's evidence against large-scale conspiracy involving thousands of knowing participants. The coordinated silence across US, European, Chinese, UAE, and Indian space agencies is perhaps most compelling evidence for something beyond coincidence. These nations don't agree on much. They compete economically, clash politically, operate from fundamentally different governance philosophies. Getting them to coordinate on anything is difficult. Yet all are silent about 3i Atlas Mars encounter. All delayed releasing data. All using similar language about processing times and analysis ongoing. Either they're genuinely following similar scientific protocols that all involve delays, they've reached informal coordination, agreeing that premature release serves no one's interest. They're all waiting to see who releases first, playing information game. They all saw something disturbing enough that silence was obvious response, we don't know which, but the coordination, whether deliberate or coincidental, is striking. Here's where I land personally. Some level of information control is probably happening, and some level is probably justified, not because malevolent cabal wants to control humanity, but because releasing ambiguous data prematurely causes more harm than good. The object is genuinely unusual, data is genuinely unclear, and authorities are genuinely trying to figure out appropriate response. But the process is flawed. Communication has been terrible. The appearance of cover-up, whether or not actual cover-up exists, has been handled clumsily. Better approach radical transparency with appropriate context. Release images with honest assessment. Here's what we see. Here's what it might be. Here's what we don't know. Here's why we're uncertain. Trust public to handle ambiguity. Trust scientists to debate interpretations publicly. Trust democratic processes to navigate uncertainty. Instead, we got silence. And silence breeds the conspiracy theories that secrecy was supposedly trying to prevent. The real test comes in December. If 3i Atlas emerges from solar conjunction and Scenario A comprehensive data is rapidly released, showing natural comet with exotic but explicable properties. The delays were genuine processing times and transparency returns. Scenario B. Continued silence, more delays, minimal releases with vague statements. This suggests information control extending beyond initial caution into something more systematic.
Scenario C. Sudden announcement. 3i Atlas shows signs of artificial origin. International task force has been established, further information forthcoming. This confirms suspicion that authorities were preparing disclosure strategy. The response to emergence will reveal which interpretation is correct: incompetence, conspiracy, or rational secrecy. Until then, we're left with patterns that could mean everything or nothing, reading tea leaves, while truth remains hidden behind solar glare and bureaucratic opacity. On August 15, 1977, Jerry Amon circled a sequence of characters on a computer printout and wrote one word: wow. That word has echoed through nearly 5 decades of SETI research, tantalizing and frustrating in equal measure, potential evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence that never repeated, never explained itself, never resolved into confirmed signal or dismissed noise. Until now, we had no plausible source. 3i Atlas changes everything. Let me review what made the WOW signal so compelling and so frustrating. Frequency: 1420.456 MHz within protected bandwidth around the hydrogen line, 1420.405 MHz. This isn't random. The 21-centimeter hydrogen line is one of most important spectral features in radio astronomy. Any civilization capable of radio astronomy would know this frequency. It's the cosmic hello channel, the place you'd broadcast if you wanted to be found by others who understand physics. The signal appeared 0.51 MHz, offset from the exact hydrogen line, possibly due to Doppler shift from relative motion, possibly intentional offset to distinguish artificial transmission from natural hydrogen emission. Intensity: the signal strength peaked at 6 EQUJ5 in Big Ear's coding system, representing approximately 30 times the background noise level. This is strong, far stronger than you'd expect from random interference or terrestrial source. Duration: exactly 72 seconds, the full window during which Big Ear's beam swept across that region of sky. The signal appeared, followed expected rise and fall pattern as telescope beam moved, then disappeared. Perfect behavior for distant point source. Polarization: the signal was narrowband, concentrated in specific frequency rather than spread across spectrum like natural astrophysical sources. Natural processes produce broadband emission. Artificial transmitters produce narrowband. Non-repetition: despite hundreds of follow-up observations using multiple telescopes over decades, the signal never repeated. This is the frustrating part, the feature that keeps WOW in category of interesting but unconfirmed, rather than confirmed artificial transmission. Big Ear detected the signal from direction of Sagittarius constellation, specifically coordinates approximately right ascension, 19 or 25 mm declination, 27 degrees. This region lies toward the galactic center where stellar density is highest. More stars mean more potential civilizations, more opportunities for intelligence to develop. But Sagittarius is huge, one of the zodiac constellations spanning roughly 867 square degrees. Locating the signal within Sagittarius doesn't narrow source to specific star. And here's the crucial detail: Big Ear used 2 feed horns separated by 3 minutes of observation time. If signal had been continuous, both horns would have detected it. Only one did, meaning either the source was moving or the transmission lasted only briefly, perhaps targeted specifically at Earth's position for that 72-second window. Now we add the calculation that transforms speculation into testable hypothesis. On August 12, 1977, 3 days before WOW detection, 3i Atlas was positioned approximately 600 AU from Earth. The light travel time from that distance, 3.3 days. The object's position right ascension, 19 age 40 more declination, plus 119 degrees.
The angular separation between 3I Atlas's 1977 position and WOW signal origin approximately 4 Grig in right ascension, 46 Sweetorgan declination. At first glance, 46 Sweetorgan seems like massive discrepancy, but accounting for uncertainties. In 3I Atlas, trajectory, reconstruction, uncertainties. In WOW signal localization, single horn detection makes precise positioning difficult. Possibility of signal reflection or relay through natural structures. The alignment becomes statistically significant probability, approximately 0.6% that two random directions would coincide this closely. If 3I Atlas transmitted WOW signal from 600 AU working backward through inverse square law, the required transmitter power calculates to 0.52 gigawatts. That's nuclear reactor scale, not beyond technological capability for civilization capable of interstellar travel, but definitely indicating deliberate high-energy broadcast. For comparison, Arecibo telescope, at peak transmission 2 megawatts, 1,000 times less. Most powerful radio transmitter on Earth, 2.5 megawatts. Typical nuclear power plant. 1 gigawatt 3I Atlas would need power source, comparable to industrial-scale nuclear generation to produce observed signal. Exactly the kind of power source you'd expect on interstellar probe designed to operate for millions of years. Radio astronomy community worldwide is mobilizing for November-December observation campaign unprecedented in scope and coordination.
Allen Telescope Array ATA located in California. This is dedicated SETI instrument, 42 6-meter dishes specifically designed for detecting artificial signals. ATA can monitor multiple frequency bands, simultaneously searching millions of channels while tracking 3I Atlas. Very large array VLA New Mexico facility with 27 25-meter antennas working in concert. Not primarily SETI instrument, but capable of extraordinarily sensitive radio detection across wide frequency range. Fast 500-meter aperture spherical telescope. China's massive single-dish telescope, largest radio telescope in world. Exquisitely sensitive to faint signals. FAST has dedicated time in November for 3I Atlas monitoring. Meerkat South African array of 64 dishes providing southern hemisphere coverage that complements northern observatories. Crucial for continuous monitoring as Earth rotates.
Breakthrough. Listen. The most comprehensive SETI program ever undertaken, backed by $100 million funding from Yuri Milner. They've committed major resources to 3I Atlas observation booking time at multiple facilities. Unlike traditional SETI that searches randomly across sky hoping to find artificial signals, the 3I Atlas campaign has specific target and specific hypotheses to test primary search monitor, hydrogen line frequency 1420 MHz continuously. If object transmitted at this frequency in 1977, likely to do so again. Also check harmonics integer multiples of hydrogen line that might carry information. Secondary search scan broad frequency range around 3I Atlas looking for any narrowband emissions that can't be explained by natural processes. Modern instruments can monitor millions of frequency channels simultaneously. Tertiary search. Look for pulsed signals, repetitive patterns, modulated transmissions that might carry information. Even if not directed at us, internal communications or navigation beacons might be detectable. Temporal strategy monitor continuously rather than in discrete observations. If signal appears briefly like WOW did, continuous monitoring ensures we don't miss it. The coordination is remarkable. Observatories on multiple continents working together to ensure 24-hour coverage. As Earth rotates, one facility sets, while another rises, maintaining continuous watch. Specific signal characteristics that would confirm artificial origin. Narrowband emission, natural astrophysical sources are broadband. Artificial transmitters are narrowband energy, concentrated in specific frequency. Doppler drift. If 3i Atlas is moving relative to Earth at 58 km/s, any transmission would show predictable frequency shift over time. This drift pattern would prove signal originates from object rather than from terrestrial interference. Modulation patterns. Natural signals don't carry information.
Artificial signals do through amplitude, modulation, frequency, modulation phase, modulation. Detecting any structured modulation confirms intelligence. Repetition. If signal repeats on schedule, hourly, daily, during specific geometric alignments, that suggests purposeful broadcasting rather than random emission. Response to our signals. If we transmit toward 3i Atlas and receive response, that's definitive proof of two-way communication. Several groups are not just listening, but transmitting toward 3i Atlas, attempting to initiate communication. Messaging to extraterrestrial intelligence. METI is controversial. Some argue it's dangerous, alerting potentially hostile civilization to our presence before we're ready for consequences. Others argue we've been broadcasting radio and television signals for 80 years. Our presence is already known to anyone listening within 80 light years.
The 3i Atlas transmissions focus on mathematical concepts. Prime numbers, fundamental constants, geometric patterns, attempting to establish common language for communication. Like Carl Sagan's golden record on Voyager probes, but sent as radio waves toward object that might be listening. Humanity's own interstellar probe plans provide template for understanding what 3i Atlas might be transmitting and why. Breakthrough Starshot proposes sending thousands of tiny laser-propelled probes to Alpha Centauri. Each probe would observe target star system during flyby record data on sensors and memory. Transmit findings back to Earth via laser communication. The transmission power required to send signal, 4.37 light-years from Alpha Centauri back to Earth, approximately 100 watts if using tightly focused laser communication. Radio transmission would require significantly more power. If 3i Atlas is transmitting home back to civilization that launched it billions of years ago, we might detect those transmissions even if not intended for us. Listening to alien phone calls rather than alien greetings. Early November, when 3i Atlas emerges from behind Sunmark's critical observation window. If object was communicating during perihelion passage hidden from Earth observation by solar glare, those transmissions might continue into November when we can observe. The geometry is optimal object will be moving away from sun, visible in night sky, positioned for long observation periods by ground-based telescopes. Radio astronomers worldwide are prepared. Observation schedules synchronized. Data processing pipelines established. Protocols for handling detection are in place. If signal appears, if narrowband emission at hydrogen line or any other characteristic frequency begins broadcasting from 3i Atlas's position, we'll know within hours.
The alert system will notify observatories globally, allowing immediate confirmation from multiple independent facilities. SETI community has established verification procedures for any potential detection. Stage 1 initial detection, single observatory detects anomalous signal. Immediate checks rule out terrestrial interference satellite communications equipment malfunction. Stage 2, confirmation observation alert sent to other observatories requesting confirmation. Signal must be detected by multiple independent facilities to eliminate local interference. Stage 3 characterization, detailed analysis of signal properties. Frequency, bandwidth modulation, polarization, time variability. Comparison against natural astrophysical sources. Stage 4, position verification. Confirmed signal originates from 3i Atlas rather than terrestrial source or background object. Doppler shift should match object's known velocity. Stage 5, international notification. If confirmed, artificial inform International Astronomical Union, national governments, and scientific community before public announcement. Stage 6, public disclosure coordinate announcement through multiple channels, ensuring accurate information reaches public before speculation and misinformation dominate. The entire verification process from initial detection to public announcement could take 24-72 hours, balancing need for certainty with need for timely communication. But what if we detect nothing? What if November passes? December passes. 3I Atlas departs our solar system, and we never hear a whisper of artificial transmission. Absence of signal doesn't prove absence of intelligence. Many reasons artificial object might not transmit power conservation. If energy reserves are limited, transmitting only at critical moments preserves resources for primary mission.
Stealth protocol. Reconnaissance probes might operate silently to avoid detection by primitive civilizations that could react hostilely, damage systems. After billions of years, communication equipment might have failed while propulsion and navigation continue functioning. Different communication method, maybe they use optical lasers, quantum entanglement, gravitational waves, or techniques we haven't imagined rather than radio transmission, nothing to report. If mission is simply observation and return, no need to broadcast. The probe carries data home rather than transmitting it. So silence in December doesn't resolve anything. It just means we haven't detected radio signals. Not that 3I Atlas isn't artificial. If 3I Atlas did transmit WOW signal in 1977, the 48-year gap between signal and arrival makes narrative sense. The object was still in outer solar system in 1977, approaching but years away from becoming visible to optical telescopes. The transmission announced, "I am here, I am coming, prepare." 48 years later it arrives. The greeting preceded the visitor, giving us time to develop technology capable of studying it, time to psychologically prepare for what it represents. This is exactly how first contact should happen if designed to minimize shock, advance notice, gradual approach, opportunity for recipient civilization to ready itself. The WOW signal wasn't random burst. It was announcement. And now the announcer has arrived. After spending over an hour exploring 3I Atlas from every angle, astronomical observation, remote viewing testimony, conspiracy theories, technological implications, let me distill what we actually know with confidence and what remains speculation, requiring honest acknowledgement of uncertainty. These facts are established by multiple independent observations, peer-reviewed analysis, and cross-institutional verification. Fact 1. 3I Atlas is real interstellar object arriving from beyond our solar system with velocity and trajectory, confirming external origin. Its existence is undisputed. Fact 2. The object is significantly larger and more massive than the previous two confirmed interstellar visitors. Size estimates suggest 7-kilometer diameter mass, potentially 33 billion tons, based on trajectory stability during active outgassing.
Fact 3. 3I Atlas exhibits active outgassing, releasing approximately 40 kWh of water vapor while positioned at distances from Sun where this activity shouldn't occur according to standard cometary models. The Swift Observatory's hydroxyl detection is confirmed. Fact 4. The object's chemistry is exotic. Nickel-to-iron ratio doesn't match solar system norms. Isotope ratios in water vapor and carbon dioxide indicate formation in stellar environment with different composition than our Sun. Fact 5. The trajectory is statistically improbable. Retrograde orbit aligned within 5 degrees of ecliptic plane. Timed for close encounters with Mars, Earth, and Jupiter. Combined probability approximately 0.05%. Fact 6. The Sagittarius WOW signal alignment is statistically significant. 3I Atlas's position 3 days before. WOW detection matches signal origin within combined uncertainty envelopes probability approximately 0.6%.
Fact 7. Comprehensive information blackout followed Mars flyby. Despite 7 spacecraft positioned for observation, minimal data has been publicly released months after closest approach. These facts are not in dispute. The interpretation of these facts, that's where uncertainty and debate begin. These observations have strong support, but aren't yet definitively established. Probable 1. The object has internal heat source driving water production at impossible distances. Amorphous ice phase transition or radioactive decay are natural candidates, but sustained power generation from nuclear reactor would also fit observations. Probable 2. The trajectory shows precision suggesting either enormous mass-making outgassing thrust negligible or active station keeping compensating for thrust. Both explanations are uncomfortable. Probable 3. The Mars encounter revealed anomalies significant enough to warrant processing delays or classification.
Whether those anomalies prove artificial origin or simply require additional analysis before publication remains unclear. Probable 4. Remote viewing convergence across 6 independent observers suggests something unusual being perceived, even if mechanism remains mysterious and interpretation remains uncertain. Speculative but possible, these hypotheses have some supporting evidence but require extraordinary confirmation. Speculation 1. 3I Atlas transmitted WOW signal in 1977. The timing, position, and power requirements align, but no repetition has been detected to confirm. Speculation 2. The object might be artificial probe from civilization with interstellar capability. A.V. Loeb's 40% probability assessment reflects genuine scientific uncertainty, not conspiracy theorizing. Speculation 3. The December timeline fork, perceived by remote viewers, might reflect genuine future probability branches. This requires accepting consciousness can perceive across time, which mainstream physics doesn't support, but quantum interpretations allow. Speculation 4. Mars might harbor ancient installations that 3I Atlas is programmed to check on. This requires accepting Brandenburg's isotopic evidence suggests past catastrophe, which most planetary scientists reject. Speculation 5. Deployed probes might be released during perihelion passage. This is testable prediction. We'll know in December whether smaller objects separate from 3I Atlas on independent trajectories. I've spent considerable time exploring dramatic possibilities, artificial intelligence, ancient civilizations, consciousness transcending space and time. Let me balance that speculation with dose of reality. Most likely explanation 3I Atlas is unusual but natural comet from stellar environment with exotic chemistry. The anomalies will be explained through better understanding of interstellar object physics once we gather sufficient data. Probability assessment, natural origin, approximately 60% unusual natural phenomena. Approximately 25% artificial origin, approximately 15%. These aren't authoritative percentages, they reflect my subjective assessment of evidence weight. Other investigators would assign different probabilities based on their interpretation of available data. Honestly, acknowledging limits of knowledge is crucial. Unknown 1, we don't know 3I Atlas's structure. Despite remote viewing descriptions and amateur image enhancement, we lack high-resolution confirmed imagery showing whether object is natural irregular comet nucleus or something with geometric features. Unknown 2, we don't know whether object transmitted radio signals. Despite WOW correlation, we have no confirmed detection of current emissions from 3I Atlas.
Unknown 3. We don't know what Mars orbiters saw during October 3rd flyby. The data exists but hasn't been released with sufficient detail for independent analysis. Unknown 4. We don't know whether remote viewing is genuine perception or psychological projection. The mechanism remains unexplained even if statistical anomalies suggest something real occurs. Unknown 5. We don't know object's ultimate trajectory and destination. Will it escape solar system entirely, or is Jupiter encounter designed to alter course for additional observations? 2 questions override all others.
Question 1: is 3i Atlas natural or artificial? This single question subsumes dozens of subsidiary inquiries about composition, trajectory, behavior, origin. Answering it requires evidence we don't yet possess: high-resolution structural imaging, electromagnetic emission detection, or behavioral observations, proving intelligent control. December observations might provide this evidence, or might deepen mystery, or might confirm natural origin and close the investigation with satisfied but disappointed conclusion that universe is stranger than expected, but not quite as strange as hoped. Question 2: are we alone? Sky Atlas forces this eternal question into immediate practical relevance. For millennia, humans have wondered whether intelligence exists elsewhere. For decades, SETI has searched. Now we have object that might be first confirmed evidence, or might be elaborate coincidence teaching us humility about pattern-matching tendency. The answer transforms everything or nothing depending on outcome. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. We crave resolution, definitive answers, clear conclusions. But there's profound value in sitting with unknowing, in acknowledging limits while continuing investigation. Science advances through honest uncertainty more than through confident claims. The willingness to say, "I don't know, let's find out," is more valuable than premature certainty that forecloses inquiry. 3i Atlas exists in this productive uncertainty space, anomalous enough to demand investigation, ambiguous enough to resist easy categorization. Exactly the kind of phenomenon that teaches us most about reality and about our own cognitive biases. The emerging object will constrain possibilities dramatically. If natural processes confirmed, the anomalies will have prosaic explanations we hadn't considered. Exotic ice physics, unusual stellar formation, chemistry, geometric coincidences more common than probability suggested. We'll learn that universe is weirder than models allowed, but still operates within natural law. If artificial origin confirmed, everything changes. First contact with alien intelligence, even if that intelligence is ancient autonomous probe rather than active civilization, marks before, after threshold in human history. We'll learn we're not alone, never were, and that cosmos is populated by intelligences operating on timescales and scales that dwarf human experience. If uncertainty remains, more data might simply deepen mystery rather than resolve it. Additional anomalies discovered new questions, raised controversy, intensifying rather than settling. We'll learn that some phenomena resist easy categorization, existing permanently in liminal space between natural and artificial. Each outcome teaches us something valuable about universe and about our epistemological methods for understanding it. The synthesis 3i Atlas is real. It's anomalous. Multiple independent observations confirm characteristics that don't fit comfortably into natural comet models. Statistical improbabilities suggest either extraordinary luck or extraordinary design, and this is crucial, anomalous doesn't mean artificial. Improbable doesn't mean impossible. Our failure to immediately explain something doesn't mean it's inexplicable. The most intellectually honest position is open uncertainty. Investigate rigorously, gather data systematically, test hypotheses carefully, and be prepared for answers that surprise us regardless of our expectations. That's where we are now, waiting for December, watching for what emerges from behind solar glare, ready to observe whatever reality chooses to reveal. Regardless of what Atlas ultimately proves to be, whether confirmed natural comet, confirmed artificial probe, or forever ambiguous anomaly, the investigation itself has already transformed us in subtle but significant ways. For the first time in human history, we're seriously discussing interstellar visitor as potential technology rather than automatically assuming natural origin. This shift in perspective from what cosmic process created this to who might have built this and why represents evolution in collective consciousness. We're allowing ourselves to consider that we might not be alone, that intelligence might be common rather than rare, that the universe might be populated by civilizations operating on timescales and scales that make human history look like brief flicker. This consideration, independent of whether 3 Atlas confirms, it expands mental possibility space.
We're thinking bigger, looking further, entertaining hypotheses that previous generations would have dismissed as science fiction. 3i Atlas demonstrates that rigorous science and profound mystery aren't opposites, but partners. The most careful astronomical observations, the most precise mathematical analysis, the most thorough peer review. All of these lead not to comfortable certainty, but to uncomfortable questions. Science, at its best, doesn't eliminate mystery. It reveals deeper mysteries, asking better questions even when answers remain elusive. The remote viewing component adds another dimension, perhaps. Consciousness participates in reality in ways that materialist science hasn't fully grasped. Perhaps awareness can perceive across distances and time through mechanisms we don't yet understand. Perhaps the observer and observed are more intimately connected than conventional epistemology allows. These aren't anti-scientific positions. They're recognition that science remains incomplete, that phenomena exist at boundaries of current understanding, that intellectual humility serves truth better than premature certainty. 3i Atlas reminds us that Earth isn't center of cosmic drama. We're one planet among billions orbiting one star among hundreds of billions in one galaxy among trillions. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. Our sun formed 4.6 billion years ago. Anatomically, modern humans emerged 300,000 years ago. Recorded civilization spans 5,000 years. If intelligent life exists elsewhere, and the sheer scale of cosmos makes this probable, then civilizations millions or billions of years more advanced than ours are possible. Their technology would appear magical to us, their motivations incomprehensible, their existence so far beyond our experience that we lack conceptual categories for understanding them. 3i Atlas, whether natural or artificial, represents this vast cosmos breaking through into our awareness.
We're children, discovering that the universe is larger, stranger, more populated than bedtime stories suggested. How humanity responds to 3i Atlas reveals what we are and shapes what we might become. Path 1, Fear. We frame ambiguity as threat. Deploy military responses. Attempt to control, contain, or destroy what we don't understand. Retreat into tribalism, nationalism, species-level paranoia. This path leads to isolation, cosmic and terrestrial. We prove ourselves unready for contact, too immature to handle existence of other intelligences. The universe leaves us alone, not because we're uninteresting, but because we're dangerous to ourselves. Path 2, Curiosity. We frame ambiguity as opportunity. Mobilize scientific resources. Approach with openness, wonder, willingness to learn. Unite across human divisions to present ourselves as exploratory conscious, ready for whatever truth emerges. This path leads to growth, expansion of knowledge, transformation of consciousness, potential integration into broader cosmic community. We prove ourselves ready, not by being perfect, but by choosing curiosity over fear when confronting unknown. The choice isn't made by governments or institutions, but by collective orientation, millions of individual decisions about how to interpret and respond to mystery. Quantum mechanics teaches that observation affects the observed. Perhaps at consciousness level this isn't mere metaphor. Perhaps the act of watching 3i Atlas, thinking about it, wondering about its nature, perhaps these acts of attention influence reality itself, not through magical thinking but through genuine participation. Consciousness isn't passive receiver of information but active participant in reality's unfolding. The timeline fork that remote viewers describe might be real not as predetermined destiny, but as probability space navigated through collective awareness. Our choices about how to observe, how to interpret, how to respond, these shape which potential future crystallizes into actuality.
Even if December resolves Three Eye Atlas's nature, definitively deeper questions remain, if natural. Why do we long so deeply for confirmation that we're not alone? What does this longing reveal about human consciousness, about the relationship between awareness and cosmos? Is the search for alien intelligence actually search for ourselves, for meaning, purpose, connection? If artificial, what does it mean to encounter intelligence we didn't create that might be vastly superior to our own? How do we maintain sense of human importance and worth when confronted with beings who've mastered challenges we haven't even identified? What is our role in universe that contains others, like us or so unlike us we can barely comprehend them? If uncertain, how do we live with permanent ambiguity about fundamental questions? How do we function when reality refuses to resolve into comfortable categories? Is comfort even the goal, or is the productive tension of not knowing closer to truth than any definitive answer? The legacy centuries from now, when humanity has spread beyond Earth, when we've encountered other intelligences or confirmed we're alone, when technologies we can't imagine have solved problems we haven't yet identified, people will look back at Three Eye Atlas as pivotal moment. Not because it proved anything specific, but because it marked transition in human consciousness. The moment we allowed ourselves to seriously consider that we might not be universe's only conscious observers. The moment astronomy became not just study of distant objects, but potential archaeology of alien civilizations. The moment we stopped pretending we had answers and started sitting with questions. Three Eye Atlas invites us to grow up cosmically, to move beyond childhood conviction that we're center of everything toward adult recognition that we're participants in something vastly larger than ourselves.
This isn't diminishment, it's liberation. The responsibility of being universe's only consciousness is crushing. But as one consciousness among many, as part of ancient and ongoing story of intelligence, gradually understanding itself, that's role we can inhabit with humility and wonder. Whether Three Eye Atlas confirms this invitation or not, the invitation remains. The universe is vast, time is long, intelligence might be common. And we're here now, aware, asking questions, reaching outward with instruments and inward with consciousness. Ultimately, Three Eye Atlas teaches us to practice wonder. That state of consciousness that holds paradox without collapsing it, that observes without demanding immediate explanation, that welcomes mystery as teacher rather than problem to solve. Wonder isn't ignorance. It's sophisticated epistemological stance, recognizing that reality exceeds our models, that truth emerges through patient observation, rather than premature conclusion, that the universe rewards those who approach with open hands and open minds. The lights are dimming as this investigation concludes, but the inquiry continues. Three Eye Atlas moves through our solar system, whether we watch or not, following trajectory determined billions of years ago or determined moment by moment through navigation we haven't detected. December will bring data, observations, measurements, and those measurements will either answer our questions or teach us to ask better ones. Either outcome is gift if we receive it with appropriate humility and appropriate wonder. As I finish writing this, Three Eye Atlas approaches perihelion. In hours hidden behind our sun's overwhelming brightness, the object will face thermal stress that has shattered countless comets throughout solar system history. If it's natural, it might fragment, showering space with debris that tells us about stellar environments 7 billion years ago. If it's artificial, it will emerge intact in November, possibly accompanied by something we can't yet imagine. If it's something else entirely, then we learn that reality resists our categories. The remote viewers saw a vessel. The astronomers see statistical impossibilities. The prophecies describe timeline forks. And perhaps they're all seeing the same thing from different angles, a universe stranger, more conscious, more interconnected than our models allow. What strikes me is how the question has transformed from what is Three-Eye Atlas to what are we becoming? Through asking, the object might remain forever ambiguous. But we're not ambiguous. We're observers who chose to look carefully, think deeply, hold uncertainty with intellectual honesty. We're a species reaching beyond planetary boundaries with both spacecraft and consciousness. Whether Three-Eye Atlas notices us, we've noticed it. And in that noticing, we've become something slightly different than we were before.
When six minds independently perceive the same impossible object across millions of miles, when mathematics reveals coincidences that strain probability beyond breaking, when an ancient traveler arrives from stellar nurseries that predate our world, what does this tell us about consciousness itself? Are we discovering something out there, or are we finally recognizing something that's been here all along? Consciousness as fundamental property of universe, allowing it to observe itself through our eyes. Is Three-Eye Atlas the visitor? Or is consciousness the visitor? Awareness itself, the cosmic traveler that moves through matter like we move through space, touching distant objects. Not through photons, but through something more fundamental we haven't named. And if observation connects observer and observed across impossible distances, if wondering about Three-Eye Atlas creates relationship transcending space-time, then what are we really? What is this awareness that looks at stars and at itself and can't distinguish between the two because they're the same movement, the universe attempting to understand itself through our eyes? Let that question work in you. Don't answer it. Sit with it. Because maybe Three-Eye Atlas isn't teaching us about alien civilizations. Maybe it's teaching us about ourselves, about what consciousness is and what it's capable of when we stop insisting reality fit our categories and start observing what actually presents itself. Good night, wherever you are. May you dream of the space between stars where ancient travelers carry messages written before words existed, addressed to the children of light who would one day learn to read the universe's subtlest signatures. The signal from Sagittarius echoes still. 48 years later, we're finally learning to listen.